I just want to take the chance to welcome everybody to the Building Tribal Capacity with Water Research Partnerships workshop. Before we get things going, I'll just be giving a brief overview of some technical guidelines to make sure that you all can have the best possible experience on our workshop today. As you may have heard our director Sam Fernald mention, you want to make sure for later in the afternoon when we join the breakout sessions that in order to self-select and freely move around whichever breakout sessions you'd like, to make sure that you have at least version 5.3 of your Zoom client. You can, in the little client application, click your avatar and there should be a drop-down box where you can select check for updates. And then as well, we welcome participation in the chat. If you'd like to reach out to any of the presenters or any other participants, feel free to get some dialogue and discussion going there as well. And then lastly, I'll just say that if you notice that you're maybe having some bandwidth issues with the video connection, you can try to disable your video, and that may help improve things. And with that, I'll turn things over now to Sam Fernald, Director of the New Mexico Water Resources Research Institute.
Great. So welcome everybody to our workshop on building tribal capacity with water research partnerships. I'd like to start with our NMSU land acknowledgement statement. New Mexico State University accepts Native American knowledge and worldview, their intimate relationship to the natural world. The genesis of the Southwest indigenous peoples such as Pueblo, Navajo, and Apache established their guardianship of the lands now occupied by New Mexico State University. As New Mexico's land-grant university, we acknowledge and respect the sovereign Indian nations and indigenous culture groups as our predecessors and neighbors. We pledge to have a meaningful and respectful relationship with the sovereign Indian nations and tribal communities. Our Water Institute mission, we were established in response to the drought of the 1950s, is to support research that improves water management in New Mexico. So that includes water management for all the diverse peoples, communities, ecosystems. And I'd like to give a little bit of a history of how we got to this workshop today. When I joined the Water Institute as director 10 years ago, and we were meeting with our Water Conference Advisory Committee because we sponsor the annual New Mexico Water Conference, the committee members expressed the importance of Native American water rights and water issues, but were hesitant to include that as a topic of our annual water conference. I thought it was very important to include those perspectives. So we explored possibilities for a tribal-themed water conference with help from Kathy Ortega-Klett and also Blaine Sanchez. In 2019, we held the 64th annual New Mexico Water Conference titled Common Water, Sacred Water, Tribal Perspectives on Water Issues in New Mexico. And Mark will touch on a few more details about that later this morning. So as part of that conference, we planned a follow-up workshop, and that was really emphasized by Myron Armijo, the tribal liaison from the Office of the State Engineer. Myron was committed to this idea that the conference wouldn't only be a meeting, but it would have tangible outcomes. And he proposed the follow-up workshop, even as we were planning the conference. And we set up a planning group for this workshop that included Myron, me, and 3 other members, Crystal Tully Cordova, who's the principal hydrologist from Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources, and also the Water Management Group, and also Lonnie Sinajini, who's an assistant professor from the University of New Mexico. And Mark, who you just heard from, is coordinating the workshop planning group. And this group spent many hours putting together this workshop and reaching out to their contacts to bring the best information together. 4 objectives today. Encourage new and continuing collaborative research and foster discussion on the best practices. Show how collaborative projects benefit research institutions and support Native students doing research within their own tribal communities. Promote community engaged and community-led water research, and promote water research that builds tribal capacity. And I think that by promoting research that supports tribal capacity, I've started to see the ways that traditional knowledge can contribute to water research in New Mexico. And I think this improved research will better represent the hydrologic diversity of New Mexico and improve water management. So just a minute here on highlights. We're packed with great content all day. Crystal will kick off the morning with 5 presentations, and then we'll close out the morning with a panel on best practices. And just a quick note, from my perspective, I learned during this workshop planning, for example, data are not a commodity. They can't just be extracted from local communities and then used separately for researcher needs. They're better viewed as a local resource that can be studied but not appropriated. And I've been working in New Mexico communities for many years, but just planning this workshop has shown me new ways to improve my practices. Anyway, at lunchtime, we'll have a break. You can bring your own brown bag lunch to a video about Navajo Nation water access with follow-up Q&A. And then in the afternoon, we'll have 7 breakouts with facilitators and note takers. And our focus on the breakouts is to hear your perspectives. So please come to the breakouts, and combined with the survey feedback, those perspectives will pave the way for the future. And Lonnie will close things out with our next steps to build on this workshop. All righty, so welcome once again, and I'd like to now introduce our first speaker, Crystal Tully Cordova. She's from the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources, the principal hydrologist in the Water Management Branch. She's an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. Crystal has worked collaboratively with Navajo Nation partners on water research since 2013. She received her doctorate in geology and interdisciplinary graduate certificate in sustainability from the University of Utah. She's received a Master of Water Resources in Hydroscience and a BS in Earth and Planetary Sciences from UNM. Crystal, please take it away.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for being here today. She'e Crystal Tuli Cordova Yanishya, Twitch Eatni Nishlan, Katnesatni Bushish Chin, Hashkan Hedzoha Edashache, Two Heglini Edashanala, Bisto Klejendejgij, Do Twatlagai Dent Nasha, Department of Water Resources, Water Management Branch, A Banashnish. It's only right that I acknowledge who I am and where I am from. I am Crystal Tuli Cordova, a principal hydrologist with the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources Water Management Branch. I am of the Bitterwater clan, born for the Tangle People clan. My maternal grandfather's clan is the water that flows together in my maternal grandfather's clan is the Yucca Fruit Strongana line. My paternal grandfather's clan is the water that flows together. Sorry, I tried to read chat and then also introduce myself at the same time. But I am from the Navajo Nation. I'm from the communities on the Arizona side of a community called Blue Gap, Arizona. My mother is from the New Mexico side, from Tuatlagai. If you've ever been to Gallup, it's a community about 15 minutes drive from Gallup. And today it's important that I talk about who I am and where I am from, because that has motivated where I am currently at and employed and what I do. So as I mentioned in my clans, I have water clans, and it's important. It seemed like only destiny would bring me to the place that I am at currently with my water career, and I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. But I want to be able to talk more about building tribal capacity through water research partnerships. There are 23 tribes in New Mexico, 19 pueblos, and 3 Apache tribal nations, as well as 1 Navajo nation. And each nation is a sovereign nation with its own government and lifeways, culture, and traditions. And water challenges across tribes, pueblos, and nations span from water quality, water production, unresolved water rights, implementation of settled water rights, continued climate change impacts affecting tribal lands, aging infrastructure, continued need for water infrastructure, and the list goes on. Many tribes of pueblos and nations have limited personnel, resources, and funding to address the water challenges they face. And what our agenda will highlight today is an opportunity to be able to allow an opportunity of partnership not only for the benefit of for the tribe, but also for the benefit of different entities, federal entities that we work with, state entities, academic institutions, non-governmental organizations as well. And what you'll learn from our program today is an opportunity to learn of what's currently being done. I think it's important that we start off, after my presentation, by giving an example of a student that is currently doing research and how the research has adapted with continued changes, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. It's also important to understand that there are different opportunities that we may not be aware of, resources. And so this program today have different people to be able to discuss those opportunities. It's also important that we have a better understanding that there is a need for improvement for effective communication, as well as engagements with tribes, pueblos, and nations. And one example that will be given will be from the state perspective by Myron Armijo. And as we progress forward, it's important to have an understanding of best practices. When we do any task, it's always great to hear of what we can do better to be more efficient, to streamline the process. And so we have an array of panelists that will be discussing from their perspectives, either working with the University of New Mexico as part of the Laguna Planning Program, as well as High Watermark LLC, as well as from a perspective of a federal agency. And then you'll also see today in our brown bag lunch, a video that is describing, many times in the media you hear about, for example, at least with the tribe that I work with, the Navajo Nation, 30–40% of the Navajo Nation doesn't have piped water. And when you hear that, it's just like a period. There's no further explanation when in the media, but what's important to understand that is that a lot is currently being done to be able to address water access challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we encourage you to stay for that opportunity to witness the video, but also the panel discussion. We also have our breakout sessions in which we will discuss very crucial topics that have come up in the past, not only at the 2019 meeting that we had, but also conversations that have been going on virtually at different platforms throughout the state of New Mexico. And so everything from universal access to clean water, it's important to have that understanding and understand the work that is underway, to have discussion about research to inform tribal water rights, also discuss environmental justice. Sam talked about data sharing and collaborative models. It's important that when we work with tribal nations that we have a better understanding of how that will occur, especially because the uniqueness of sovereign nations that tribes, pueblos, and nations are. And we also have another breakout session that are focused on, the research to support adoption and implementation of water quality standards throughout New Mexico and throughout tribal lands. There are many water quality challenges that either may be associated with past legacy mining, as well as, just water quality parameters that are due to naturally occurring substances within the geological layers. So it's important to have a better understanding and discussion about these topics. These topics were chosen because of the nexus with tribal nations and pueblos and how they may be impacted, and to gain and share a perspective from that aspect. It's important to also have an understanding, when we are part of something, it's important that we think about the future. And as a Native American, as a member of the Navajo Nation, we're always thinking about that, thinking ahead for the future generations beyond us. For the work that I do, I not only think of my children, I think of my children's children and beyond that. And sometimes when we just think of, out 50 years or 100 years, it's important to also think beyond that. And so Lonnie Sinajini from the University of New Mexico will be discussing the next steps, and it'll be a great opportunity to learn not only what is currently going on, but also what can be going on in the future. We hope that today can be a platform for you all to network with one another. And it's important that we have the opportunity using this virtual platform to be able to connect, to learn about perspectives that we may not have a firm understanding about, or maybe questions in that we've had. Perhaps you're coming today thinking, you know, I would like to partner with a tribe, pueblo, or nation to do water research. What are their needs? It's important to have communication in order to not only come with your research questions to the tribe and say, how does this benefit you? But rather integrating the collaboration within the research questions that you're asking, because many of these areas have limited research that has been done. There are also needs, at least from our standpoint, the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources, we've collaborated with many different partners. Research is a priority to us, but we don't have the funding and technical capacity to be able to do it. Because as I stated, you know, a large percent of our population still doesn't have running water. And so the priority is to get people water. And with that being said, it's also important for us to have a better understanding of our water sustainability across the over 27,000 square miles that the Navajo Nation spans throughout Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico. But through these partnerships that we have an opportunity to do more together. And I will gladly introduce the next presenter. Nikki Tooley is a member of the Navajo Nation. She is a third-year PhD student in the Department of Environmental Science with a concentration in hydroscience. At the University of Arizona, her research focuses on ensuring that people living in Indigenous communities have access to clean drinking water to sustain their way of life in an ever-changing environment through sustainable practices and water policies and management. She is an Alfred P. Sloan 2018 to 2021 scholar, American Indian Graduate Center Fellow, and an American Indian Science and Engineering Society Sequoia Fellow. Nikki received a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Science and a Master of Science degree in Water Resources from the University of New Mexico.
Thank you, Dr. Tuli Cordova. And I'd like to make one clarification before I go on. I am now a PhD candidate, and so I'm very happy about that. This means that I'm all that much closer to being done with this program, and I'm really excited to be here today. And I won't go into reintroduce myself as Crystal has done. It's pretty much a deja vu explanation, as well as where she's from and the clanships that she has, because I also have the same clanships and also from the same area, as we come from the same parents. And so I'm very excited to be able to be here today to explain a little bit about how I am involved in this water research in working with tribal communities. And in this, I'd like to share with you a presentation that I have made. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera so I can limit any hiccups I might have with the broadband. So today, what I'll be presenting to you on is the water research and adapting with tribal water needs. And as Crystal stated, I am from the University of Arizona, is where I'm currently at in the doctoral program of it used to be soil, water, and environmental science, but now our department is called environmental science. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you today are two areas of how my water research and with the groups that I am working in have begun to adapt their water research areas in working with tribal communities in the face of a pandemic, but also in the face of climate change and climate adaptation. And so in beginning, I would like to start this presentation in this manner of expressing the great importance of tribal consultation. And so the goals of tribal consultation is really to understand this government to government relationship, that there's this unique relationship that exists between working with a sovereign nation, and that there's this understanding that needs to be there of understanding what that sovereign tribe holds. And that this, in our efforts as researchers, is to commit to comply and adhere to what these tribal sovereign entities already have as far as their laws and codes and regulations that are related to research. But then what this also does, and really putting this emphasis on the importance of tribal consultation in any area of research, and today I'll be sharing particularly in the area of water research, is to develop a relationship of good faith with working between a researcher and also the tribal entity and leadership. And for me, in this case, it's between a university and the tribe. And so this really sets up this ongoing relationship that is really heavily emphasized on communication. And so this little flow chart at the bottom really just emphasizes those three main areas of developing plans, seeking consent, and then ultimately reaching that consultation. And so that there is shown by creating this liaison, following the protocols, and then speaking and working with the tribes themselves to help understand really what the needs are of the research that would be coming forth and working with the tribe. And so the first area of research that I'd like to share with you that I'm involved in is with this group called Indigenous. And so that's the acronym. And what it stands for is Indigenous Food, Energy, and Water Security and Sovereignty. So what Indigenous does is it takes a group of trainees, such as myself, I'm a trainee of Indigenous, and what we do is we really focus on this goal here, that second bullet point, to develop a workforce with intercultural awareness in this fused nexus that develops this expertise and understanding how to address this fused nexus within Indigenous communities. And so how we go about in doing this with Indigenous is that graduate students work with the faculty at the university, but also there are these components of working with tribal universities and tribal colleges in which there's this cycle of mentorship and learning between the faculty, the graduate students at the University of Arizona, but also with the undergraduate students who are in the tribal colleges and tribal universities. And so there you can begin to see the cycle of training and mentoring where all are equal participants in this learning and also teaching experience. And so what I'd like to share with you very quickly is this Indigenous COVID-19 response and how this group of students and faculty and also affiliates of Indigenous responded in this manner of adapting water research this past year in response to COVID-19. And I really like this quote here that you see at the top of your right-hand screen, which reads, "Our community-based work with the NEC College over the past 3 years on fused challenges prepared us to respond quickly to COVID-19 challenges facing the Navajo Nation." And this was stated by our PI, Dr. Carletta Chief, who really emphasized well with that statement of what Indigenous has been doing and going back to the mission of Indigenous, really understanding that component and expressing the importance of tribal consultation and working with the tribe, but also working with the tribal colleges and universities. And so how did Indigenous respond in this manner to COVID-19? There were 3 main projects that were led by different PIs and co-PIs of Indigenous, but also where Indigenous was invited to participate in other programs. And so the first you see there was a Navajo COVID-19 water needs mapping, and that really emphasized in looking at how the water access would be addressed. And then the water off-grid water purification unit went into understanding how might those areas that have more a greater need to difficulties in water access and how water quality and water access might be addressed in that area. And then the last one, investigating linkages between arsenic exposure, diabetes and COVID-19 infections and risk on the Navajo Nation included all of the above. And so you can kind of see directly just by the titles of these projects how they all interlink and were able to work together to address the overall issue of water access and quality on Navajo. What I'd like to now share with you is a brief video that was just shown in the National Science Foundation Showcase that just ended yesterday. That was in a video created in response to the Indigenous efforts this past year to COVID-19. Mark, could you give me a thumbs up if you hear it?
The Navajo Nation spans over 27,000 square miles and is home to nearly 200,000 people, whose lives revolve highly around nation, community, and also family connections. The year 2020 drastically changed thousands of Navajo lives. Soon the whole world became aware of the drastic impacts of COVID-19 that the Navajo Nation faced. Signs were posted discouraging visits, grocery stores became empty, and further social distancing was encouraged. So what made the Navajo Nation COVID-19 impact unique? There is a lack of access to water. Approximately 30% of households on the reservation are without direct access to public water systems and must haul water. There is a lack of access to electricity. Approximately 49.7% of housing units on the reservation lack electricity services. There is a food desert. There are only 13 grocery stores located on the Navajo Nation. Understanding the unique issues the Navajo Reservation faced, immediately Indigenous looked for ways to help.
In May of 2020, the Navajo Nation invited us to present on these off-grid systems. We were then invited to join the Navajo Nation Water Access Coordination Group. We have formed multi-institutional collaborations to address food, energy, and water insecurities.
Our project has a long-term vision that the knowledge and the technologies we're working on will be proliferated within the communities by the communities. That can only be achieved through equitable collaborations between the communities, the local agencies, and our team, with the idea that our technical solutions are always driven by the voice and the needs of the communities. This project is providing the tools to the already empowered communities in the Navajo Nation to meet their needs.
Because it allows me to do research that has a positive impact on my own community.
Because it re-centralizes the importance of Indigenous ecological knowledge and its inherent place within all Western institutions.
I get the opportunity to collaborate with many different Indigenous activists and researchers.
This past year has further solidified that reimagining what it means to help is necessary. The idea of co-development is needed for solutions because people of the land know their land better than anyone else.
So I wanted to share that part of, start the presentation with talking about the water research going on with Indigenous and ending with that video to really show you that that work that went directly with the tribe in understanding what the current needs were this past year and where to emphasize the goals of Indigenous this past year and what played out, and but also to share with you some other perspectives from the team of the people who are involved with Indigenous. And so that really looked at how water research is adapted to current events such as the pandemic in 2020 and some of the needs that were addressed then. The second portion of the presentation that I would like to share with you is what is called a drought severity evaluation tool, and what I've been partnering with and working with in this co-developed tool with NASA, the Desert Research Institute, and the Department of Water Resources. There you see the team project member names, and the project team leader, Dr. Amber McCullum, would use this tool to adapt in another way water research in the face of climate change and climate adaptations. And what the drought severity evaluation tool, again, like Indigenous really emphasizes on, is this relationship building of understanding that there's this collaboration of thought in looking at the community needs. And again, as researchers, we often sometimes, I can speak for myself to this, is think that we have this highly technical background and we may have a lot of the answers. However, is this really important component of listening to learn as well, to listening to the community, acknowledging these indigenous knowledge systems and these community-based approaches, the community engagement, and looking at how we can incorporate all of these by partnering with the tribes, government agencies, and other affiliated groups, such as with this NASA Western Water Applications project. And so what DSET is it's a NASA Western Water Applications Office funded project, which was co-developed with the Navajo Nation, Department of Water Resources, and the Desert Research Institute. And what made this project unique is that it was this heavily based co-developed tool that brought about these areas here. And so in working with the tribe and in listening to their needs, we learned that this DSET tool would need to be a free web-based tool, but it had to be user-friendly and also be a time and storage saver, and making it easier to analyze the data within this tool. And only by doing this heavily co-developed development of this DSET tool were these main areas be emphasized in the final product that became live last fall. And so this is a slide briefly describing what DSET is. And so another unique feature again of DSET also included is this notion of including ground-based data. So using what the Department of Water Resources have collected as far as their rain gauge data, but also coupling it with the Earth observation satellite imagery through remote sensing and these satellite data that are collected. And all of these data set models, incorporating it all into this drought severity evaluation tool, making it easy to access, to use this easy to use interface, which you see on the map here on the left, but also create the on-the-fly maps and time series, which is all cloud-based material. And so this is just a screenshot here that I'd like to share with you to let you know that there's an introductory video, again, that really emphasized on this tribal capacity building of creating this relationship with the tribe. And again, starting with the Navajo language to introduce this tool. And this is the video that is housed on the Western Water Applications Office for NASA. And so what this all does is it just leads to more work in looking to the future and building more capacity, bringing more tools, bringing more water resource to the tribe. And so DSET wrapped up last fall, but now there's this new project that is ongoing, which is looking at the evapotranspiration. And as there on the right-hand side, filling that biggest data gap in water management. And this just is to show you that ongoing cycle that is happening with water research that is possible with the tribes, in either with the university or in this case with NASA. So thank you, and I appreciate this time to present to you today.
That is such exciting stuff. I think, Nikki, would you be available for a question or two? Because we have 2 minutes.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Mark, can somebody unmute themselves if they want to ask a question?
Yeah, feel free to to either unmute yourself, or if you'd like to post a question in the chat as well, you can do that. I do see we have a question here from Sage Mountain Flower asking, when will this tool be available to tribes?
So the first tool, the DSET, the drought severity evaluation tool, is live now. I think this presentation will be sent out, and so there's a link included in the slides where the tool is housed. But it's also, you can find it on the NASA Western Water Applications Office, and so that's for the DSET tool that is available now. But the Open ET project is ongoing now and will be made public in a couple of weeks to months.
All righty, well, we have one other question. Do you want to read that one, Mark?
Yes, this question from Alyssa says, will data used for the drought severity evaluation tool be available for download from the website for planning purposes?
Yeah, so that's a really other neat component that was built in. And so DSET was specifically focused on the Navajo Nation, but it's a spin-off off of Climate Engine, working with Google Earth Engine. And so anywhere those platforms cover, which is essentially all over the world, you can look at those different areas. But on DSET, specifically on that platform, there's a section to the right-hand side of the screen where after you develop your analysis, you can download what you created either in a JPEG or also in Excel form.
All righty, well, I think it's time to move on to our next speaker. Thanks again, Nikki, that was awesome, like someone said in the chat. All righty, so now we're gonna move on to talk by Claudia Trueblood and Charlene Carr. Claudia is the interim director of the, let's see here, Indian Resources Development at New Mexico State University in the College of Agricultural and Consumer Environmental Sciences. And she's been doing that since July 2018 and is now the director as of June 2019. She has over 19 years of experience in developing and directing programs related to social concerns, leadership, mentoring, and economic development. She has a BA in economics, an MA in communication studies, an MS in water science and management, and is currently pursuing her PhD in water science and management. And she is passionate about creating educational and economic development opportunities and working cooperatively. Charlene is a member of the village of Laguna Pueblo, New Mexico. She has 8 years of tribal outreach experience and provided agricultural programming to Native communities. Charlene has a BS in agriculture and MS in plant and environmental science from New Mexico State University. Her education background in soil science as it relates to agriculture, primarily in soil fertility. Charlene's interests are to provide educational opportunities and resources to Native communities and their members in an effort to build their capacity to reach their educational and economic endeavors. Claudia and Charlene.
Thank you so much, Sam. We're going to go ahead and share our slides right now. Just a second, let me just make a move here. Okay, so we are with Indian Resources Development and for short IRD. And what we are going to do today is to present about how IRD started, talk about the mission and the 2 parts of the mission, and talk about collaboration opportunities. So IRD started in 1978, long time ago, through a New Mexico statute, and created the program to be housed at New Mexico State University to serve the entire state of New Mexico. So Charlene will lead us into the 2 parts of the mission.
And as a statewide program, our mission is really to focus on and connect Native American students in the state of New Mexico. And we provide different opportunities for the students. That includes internships and education. And it's really so that way these students can go back into their own communities and be contributing and thriving members. And the second part of our mission is to provide tribal entities in New Mexico resources and supporting them in making the most so that way they can get and really build their technical and managerial expertise. And it's all in the areas of business, agriculture, natural resources, and engineering. And Claudia will, oh, here it goes. And with that mission, the important collaborations is what makes this unique program work. And we have a couple of main partners here. So we collaborate quite openly with our higher education institutions, the universities and colleges in New Mexico. That includes, the other land grants, the tribal colleges, and the colleges, like for example, San Juan College, Santa Fe Community College, And we also collaborate with New Mexico high schools in our mission to connect with the Native American students, the high school students. And then also tribal nations throughout New Mexico. And Claudia and some of the other staff members are located south, while I'm located up north, a little just south of Santa Fe. And lastly, the Native businesses. So any of these businesses that partner with tribal communities, we work with them. And it also includes non-Native businesses and non-for-profit businesses as well. And with that, Claudia is going to share information about internships.
Thank you, Charlene. So in collaboration with partners, IRD helps promote, fund, or develop research or internship opportunities for high school and college students. And like Nikki and other people in the conference, I'm sure will mention, is through listening and through truly collaborating and understanding where the partners will want to go. So when we discuss opportunities or pathways to research experiences and internships, we look at how much the organization as well as the students could increase what they already know and the skills they already have to provide an opportunity for growth professionally and personally. So when we talk about high school students, usually we try to support them in deciding what major they want to study or what career they want to get into, and encourage them to continue higher education. So these research experiences or internships are more focused towards that, or that's the idea. When we discuss the opportunities at the college level for college students, then we usually try to approach the research opportunities or internships as more professional development now that the students already have maybe several years of academic schooling under their belt. So how it happens is we meet with the interested party and discuss what are their goals, what they want to see the organization gaining, as well as the students. We explore the kind of mentorship and how they want to provide that mentorship for the different types of students. We talk about funding as well. Many of the organizations already have funding and interest in developing these kind of opportunities, but maybe they haven't gotten around to it. So we sit down and help through that. If funding is not available, then IRD, or partially available, then IRD could provide that support. We apply for grants and other kind of funding to be able to support those types of opportunities. So one thing that we do is if the collaborator wants to be supported by advertising the opportunities throughout a network of higher education groups or other organizations, then we use the Facebook or the IRD website where we offer different opportunities. If they want to keep the opportunities within the own tribal community, then that's okay as well. It's just all set up by the partner. So IRD is the support. And I agree with Nikki that communities are acutely aware of their needs and their assets and resources, and they are very clear about how they want to move forward in different areas, in this case, research opportunities and internships. So that's what we had for this morning. We actually wanted to leave a little time for anyone interested in knowing more about this opportunity and or to answer some questions, or if you want to write your name on the chat for us to contact you, please do so, and we can explore what you want to do.
All right, are you all standing for questions, Claudia?
Yes,
Charlene?
yes, thank you.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask about the presentation? Or any comments?
Oh, we have a question here from Lucero, and it says, do you have brochures available for this program? Yes, we do. And also, we really encourage individuals to take a look at our website. It's ird.nmsu.edu. And maybe we can place that here in the chat in a little bit. And we have a lot of our great resources online on this website. And we can even sit down with members to provide information or go over the resources on this website. And Claudia, would you like to add anything to that?
Thank you, Charlene. If you're interested, we could send you some of the pieces of information we have for the internships, and primarily we focus on how the collaboration goes and a little bit more detail of what we explained this morning, and also highlight some of the potential benefits for the students as well as for the organizations. So we will be glad to send you that if you want.
And Claudia, we have one more question from Lori. And this question is, do you have a sense of how much of an impact you've had on capacity for tribal communities?
Unfortunately, we don't have a sense yet because we're relatively new. I started with the IRD in 2019, and before that, they were not doing internships. So we had to start building relationships with tribal entities and specific units within the tribes. So we don't have a sense yet. We're barely finishing a few of the internships, one through New Mexico Technical, New Mexico Tech, yeah, with the, a unit of New Mexico Tech is working on projects of clean water in the Navajo Nation. So we'll know by the end of this year how that went and what impact that had in the students and in the organization. We also have 2 opportunities open actually with in partnership with Laguna Pueblo. So hopefully we have some students applying for that. And we have a few that have been placed with one of our partners, Run Horse Consulting. I believe one of their members is attending this workshop, and 3 students reported that it had been very beneficial to them, and so did Run Horse. So that's what we have for now. Some others are going on this summer.
And if we have time for one more question here, it says, does the IRD work with Native American students to participate in the WERC competition? And this is from Russell.
At the moment, we haven't had any students. We provide professional development support. So if Native American students that are affiliated to New Mexico tribes and the Navajo Nation contact us and apply for support, we will gladly consider that.
And if we're going to 11:15, let's see. Here's another question from Nancy. How do you identify potential Native and non-Native business partners?
So what we do is we have a collaborative, well, the main way in which we do it is we have a collaborative with the American Indian Business Enterprise Center at Arrowhead Center and with New Mexico Community Capital. And together we offered workshops to Native American business or business that are already established or that want to start. We're preparing to do a native sprint, and through that, we could identify
let me get out of this other one.
Potential entrepreneurs or businesses, native businesses. So that's one of the ways in which we do it. The other one is many of the services that the American Indian Business Enterprise Center has, the intakes are also shared with IRD if it's related to the areas of focus to support. So for example, just with one of the workshops that we were doing, Isleta del Sur Pueblo had an entrepreneurial initiative they wanted to explore, and IRD was able to connect them with some of the researchers, not just at NMSU, but other schools throughout the state that have that interest. So I hope that answers to your question.
Thank you very much. Do you think, Claudia and Charlene, you could answer some of the other questions in the chat and we can continue with our next speaker?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks a lot. So our next speaker is Myron Armijo. He's with the New Mexico Office of the State Engineer, and he serves as the tribal liaison. Before coming to the agency, he served Pueblo of Santa Ana in the positions of governor and lieutenant governor, most recently in 2016, including working for economic development programs. As tribal liaison, Myron works on a day-to-day basis with matters related to Indian water rights settlements and provides assistance with water issues related to each tribe, pueblo, or nation. His role is to educate Indians and non-Indians regarding the difference between state-based water rights and tribal water rights to facilitate future settlement negotiations, emphasizing conservation. He also works to resolve disputes without costly litigation by coordinating outreach activities, including state water planning through the state tribal water institutes. Myron, please take it away.
Thank you, Doctor, for that nice introduction. I appreciate it. And good morning, participants. Welcome to this conference today, and I appreciate your attendance to this conference. I want to talk about who I am, as Dr. Sam already talked about that, as being a former governor as well. But today, I would like to talk a little bit about effective communication and engagement of tribes, pueblos, and nations here in New Mexico. First, as everyone knows, that the tribes, pueblos, and nations are not just a minority here in the state, nor are they subject or subordinate to state governments. Tribes, pueblos, and nations are also, in some respects, but are very different in many, many ways. All have separate and distinct governments, many with a traditional form of government, and others who have constitutions. Nevertheless, the tribes, pueblos, and nations operate their governments and have become very strong in asserting their tribal sovereignty. The pueblos also have strong coalitions with many of their tribes in their areas, which make up several pueblos. For example, we have the All Pueblo Council of Governors, which are 19 pueblos here in the state, the 10 Southern Governors Council, the coalition of 6 Middle Rio Grande pueblos, Northern Pueblos Water Tributary Association, and the 8 Northern Pueblos Councils, all very strong entities today. So let's talk about state tribal relations as they are today. In the past, relations with state governments were okay. However, TPNs truly did not have the ability to engage the legislature, much less the executive, like they do today. With the coming of Indian gaming in the state, but we're not talking about this issue today, relations started to evolve into a much better state. The TPNs were able to hire lobbyists to help access state government, and including administrations who are willing to listen and work with tribal entities. Now, fast forward to today. As I said earlier, the executive branch of the state enacted landmark legislation like the State Tribal Collaboration Act, and including the elevation of the Indian Affairs Department to a cabinet level status. I think what we still need to do is to continue to promote effective communication and collaboration with state agencies and working with the tribes. We already recognize each other's political status and the importance here of working together. Many times we have common issues and concerns, and to me, better results many times can be achieved if all parties work together to achieve the desired outcome. And working on developing ways to continue the relationships established with state government. Now, let me talk about specifically about the OSE and the Interstate Stream Commission. The OSE ISC over the course of time has, in my opinion, had pretty good relationships with all tribes, pueblos, and nations throughout the state. As many of you probably know, 3 Indian water rights settlements were congressionally approved via working with the Office of the State Engineer, the parties involved, and tribes, pueblos, and nations engaged in those settlement discussions. And we still have many others that are being worked on as we speak. Discussions are taking place, and those hopefully will be in some form or fashion to be able to get their settlements done, authorized by Congress at some point, and the state government. However, with the OSE and ISC, my process, which I feel has worked pretty well for me, is to engage on a personal level, which has allowed me to speak to the tribal government and our president, chairman, in a person-to-person meeting. And if that can't be achieved, letters that go out to the tribes, pueblos, and nations, their presidents, chairmen, I like to deliver them on a personal level, to get to the governor's office, deliver that letter, and many times I've run into the governor and their chairman and have been able to discuss the contents of the letter and get a response in a fairly timely manner. And so, but not everything works. There are many times where we've had meetings where the outcomes were not quite what we wanted. But I've always said in those discussions is that we sit down, talk about the issue, concerns, and at the end of the day, if we can't agree on a specific resolution to the problem or come out with an answer, the fact is that we sat down, looked in each other's eye, as we say in my language, we say so we look across the table and see into each other's eyes and talk about these issues. And so whatever the outcome is, it's the fact that we've sat down, discussed the problem, discussed the issue, and hopefully we can come out with an answer. Many times, and of late, we've had issues where the outcome was very tense, and it's just not a good way to end a meeting. People tend to stand back and are not willing to, I guess, move things forward. But the thing that needs to be done is that we have to go back and outreach to the tribe, pueblo, or nation to ensure that we're still willing to work. We're still willing to work toward an answer, toward a resolution to that problem, and willing to have other meetings with that tribal government. The state engineers that I've worked under have all been willing to work with the tribes. They recognize the sovereignty, they recognize the rights of the pueblos with their water issues. And it's good that the cabinet secretary is willing to talk and listen to the tribes and have those discussions going forward. However, not all, as I said earlier, not all meetings come out with a good resolution. But of late, we've also had some issues with the agencies. Really don't want to talk about the budget, but I'll say this: we're resource strapped, if you will. We're very resource strapped. There's many issues out there all over the state with water. Today, we're talking about there's drought here in the state of New Mexico, a continuing drought. We could run out of water here on the Rio Grande and the Albuquerque Reach. I hope not. My hope and my prayers are that the prayers will be answered and we'll have moisture in the coming monsoon season in order to take care of the people of the state. But it's just a tough time for the state engineer's office, not having the resources available. The state engineer talked about in one of our meetings just recently that when he was here in his first stint as state engineer, he had 58 more people in the agency, in all facets of the agency, to help with these issues. And we're down that many people, and the state government has not provided us the resources necessary to hire more people for the agency. So that makes it hard. It exacerbates the ability to engage. However, that's not to say that our ability to engage and work on these issues, we just have to continue to go. We have to manage our expectations going forward with the tribes, pueblos, and nations, and let them know. And we have to be transparent as well. The transparency should be there that we are working on these matters. We will get back to you. We will meet and hope to come out with an answer or a resolution to a particular problem. So the efforts are there by the agency for the OSE, and I'm pretty sure that other agencies, cabinet level agencies, are doing everything that they can. I mean, my brother at the New Mexico Department of Transportation, the tribal liaison, former Governor Chutiva, and my friend at the Health Department, ICO is doing everything they can. And during this time of COVID, it just has exacerbated everything here. Having to meet via Zoom, although it has its good things, being able to see one another, but we're not able to interact personally. But nevertheless, we continue to work on these issues. And so we just have to continue to work at these issues. The collaboration, the State Tribal Collaboration Act, which was signed by Governor Richardson, 2009, asks that all cabinet level agencies prepare and have the ability to meet, to provide information to the tribes, pueblos, and nations, and in a timely basis. And that seems to work for the Office of the State Engineer. And so the issues of water out there, we're willing to work at it every single day as just like everyone else. It's a tough go here. However, we have to continue to engage, continue to collaborate, and figure out ways, figure out resolutions to these issues. And so that pretty much concludes my presentation in this, and I stand for questions by anyone. So I thank you for the time here, Dr. Fernald, and my colleagues, Crystal and Lonnie, who were part of the planning process. It was a good effort here, and I thank everyone for attending. So I stand for questions.
All righty, so we have some time. If we actually have a good chunk of time here, if anybody'd like to take advantage of having Myron right here and ask him questions.
Okay, I have a question from Dino Chavarria. Could we put that question back up again one more time? How do we, Dino Chavarria?
Do you want to read that, Mark?
Yeah, so he asks, Mr. Armijo, how would you recommend tribes maintain effective communication through various governmental administrations and other political hurdles?
Mr. Chavarria, my recommendation would be to ensure that tribal leaders are engaged, not only yourself in water, and make sure that if you have lobbyists and the ability to access not only the legislative branch, the senators and representatives in your districts, and also the executive branch. Many tribes have become, or pretty much all the tribes, I should say, every one of them have become very astute at accessing state government today. And so I applaud those efforts by tribal leaders. And as they come together, a lot of times with El Pueblo Council of Governors or the smaller organizations, 10 Southern or the Northern Pueblos Water Tributary Association, they all have people on their committees who are very engaged, very knowledgeable, and have the ability to work the political process. So my recommendation in a nutshell is to continue to make sure that they engage during the course of the year, but also a good time is when we have the 30-day and 60-day sessions, and during the year if you wish to go to the governor for whatever the issue is, please don't hold back. Have the tribal leaders write letters to the governor, and in particular, I'd like to say that this administration is very engaging with the tribes, pueblos, and nations throughout the state. So long answer, but I hope that answered your question, Mr. Chavarria. I saw another one.
Yes, we have here a question from Bob. He asks, how should water-oriented NGOs relate with tribes, pueblos, nations on topics such as water planning? Is it only via the state's government-to-government channel, or can there be a more direct vehicle?
Bob, I think the answer would be either way. If you're an NGO, I would be, first thing I would do is to try to get with the tribal leadership and their staff and write a letter to the tribal government and let them know that you're interested in collaborating, working with that particular Native community. And then work the other route would be to work with the state agencies as well. So be a two-pronged attack, if you will.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
We have a few more questions here. Somebody, Carlo, was asking if you could talk more about the history of water and sovereign rights in New Mexico.
Okay. As you know, the tribes, pueblos, and nations have been here for millennia and have senior water rights. and those rights are recognized by the state and their trustee, the federal government. And so with the water code that we have right now, the OSC, ISC continues to work with negotiations of making sure that the claims of the tribal governments are negotiated, and that particular basin is brought to some sense of or to an area where the water rights are resolved for that particular tribe, pueblo, or nation. And it's a tough. I didn't realize how tough an issue water was until I came to the state engineer's office. I thought it was just the fact that you opened. I know the tribes in the Middle Valley with their prior and paramount waters. We just opened up our gates, irrigate our fields, and that was it, or turn on the faucet and you're good to go. But it's not that simple as it relates to water rights. And so it's very hard for all parties involved. It's a lot of money spent, a lot of time, and but I certainly applaud all the tribal leaders who have not only had their water rights settled, the Navajo Nation, the Taos Pueblo, the Hawaii Basin, San Ildefonso, Nambe, Hawaii, and Tesuque. They have spent many years in negotiating these settlements, and we have the pueblos in the Rio Jemez, and my pueblo is part of the Rio Jemez, but although we're not participating in that particular negotiation, we have the Rio San Jose, which includes Acoma Pueblo and the Navajo Nation and Laguna Pueblo. Then we have the Zuni Basin, which has Zuni and the Navajo Nation. Then also in the upper northern New Mexico, we have Okeawinge and the Pueblo of Santa Clara with their negotiations as well. And so it's very time consuming. However, we have to continue to engage and to ensure that we come to a point where those particular water rights are settled. So I'm hoping that answers your question.
Myron, are you able to see your chat now?
Let's see.
Maybe Mark we have a few more questions if that's okay.
If Mark can read them, that'll be great.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So let me see. There was a few to choose from here. I think one that gets particularly at the theme of this workshop comes from Mike Johnson, and he asks if you have any insights on what types of water research the OSC, ISC see as needed to support the resolution of tribal water rights issues.
Well, with drought conditions that we have, you know, of course, when the negotiations are ensuing, there's many things that are done. A hydrology study and many issues have to be looked at. And so water planning is another one, which we're doing right now. I'm not sure if my colleague, Lucia Sanchez, is participating today or not, but she has been a stalwart in water planning. That's, I think, an essential part of any negotiation. And so it's there's many facets to doing research. And so gosh, I just hope I answered that question.
Right. And then I think we'll have time for at least one more question. Excuse me. Okay. To what degree and how can the nation and others interested in tribal water issues in New Mexico take advantage of Secretary Holland's posting as Secretary of the Interior?
Oh gosh. I would be writing letters about right now to Secretary Holland. I know her very well. I've worked with her before she became a representative with Congress, and so I know her very well. I would be writing letters to her and getting on her schedule for whatever the issues are, water, and which is very important, and for Navajo, like right now, we're still working with Navajo on the Navajo Gallup pipeline, and if I had the wherewithal, and if we could get the nation and pretty much all people here in the state of New Mexico who have issues with potable water and the quality of their water, the quantity of water rights, etc. Navajo Nation is, gosh, we need to get more money out to the nation in order to get that infrastructure in to get water to their communities. I realize that the communities are far apart, but there's much work to be done, as there is with many other Native communities throughout the state of New Mexico. The Water Trust Board the other day, the state engineer who was the chairman of the Water Trust Board informed me that several pueblos were funded for infrastructure funding, water tanks, deteriorated water lines, and then one of the others was Gallup, the city of Gallup, for connecting part of the one of the reaches of the Navajo Gallup water supply pipeline. And so I'm happy to see that the state is responding to these needs, but not only to the Native nations, but also to everyone in the state of New Mexico. I believe the Eastern New Mexico folks also got funding out there. I think it's in Clovis, there's an organization out there, but there's many needs throughout the state of New Mexico. So in a nutshell, reaching out to, hold on just a second. Reaching out to Secretary Holland should be paramount at this time. Reaching out to her, and I'm not sure who's going to be in the lower position, solicitor, etc. I would be talking to them as soon as you possibly can. We have a chance here, but is it going to be like 3 years maybe before the next election comes, 4 years? But I would be doing my best, doing your best to try and reach Secretary Holland. I think she'll be willing to listen to the concerns and the needs of Indian country. So that's what I'd be doing right now.
I think we have one more question.
Okay, yes. Let's see, we have one more question. Okay, Governor Armijo, how can a producer learn more about getting funding for a water tank, as you mentioned?
Well, is this question from a tribal community, tribal staff person?
Oh, this one actually comes from our previous presenter, Charlene Carr from Indian Resources Development.
Hi, Governor Armijo. Yes, this is Charlene, and I'm just asking because we do connect with a lot of producers as well in the communities, and so this would be a great resource. And feel free to connect with me afterwards. I'd love to learn more about that program.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Love to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Governor. Appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
All righty, well, I think it's about time to move on. Thank you so much, Myron. It's really, thanks, of course, for your inspiration for this whole workshop in the very first place, back when we were planning our, planning the water conference way back when. So thanks for your inspiration on that and for your presentation today.
Dr. Fernald, thank you for allowing me to participate in your group. Thank you.
All righty, so we're going to move along. We're going to hear from Mark, who you've seen all morning. Mark's program coordinator at the Water Institute, who assists in outreach, including conferences such as the annual New Mexico Water Conference, Tribal Perspectives on Water Issues in New Mexico, as well the NM and the San Juan Watershed Conferences. And Mark received his BA in journalism from University of Minnesota, worked at New York Public Radio and as an English teacher in Madrid, Spain, before moving to Las Cruces and joining the Water Institute in 2019. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today at this workshop. My goal in my short presentation here is just to expand on some of the efforts that Sam mentioned initially that helped to bring us to this workshop today, highlighting some of the key planning members and the events that brought us all here. So as Sam mentioned, previous program manager Kathy Ortega-Clet and former ISC commissioner and now second lieutenant governor of the Pueblo of Isleta, Blaine Sanchez, initially attended a conference hosted by the Arizona Water Resources Research Center in 2015 on Indigenous perspectives on sustainable water practices. And this was a real catalyst for getting us to think about forming our own working group to be able to host a conference that was centered around tribal perspectives on water issues in New Mexico, ultimately then leading to our 64th annual conference held on the homelands of the Pueblo of Pojoaque. We were graciously invited and co-sponsored by Governor Tlachi in the Pueblo. We also had a great amount of support as well from our working group team members. And I know Sam has mentioned some of them who are participating here today, such as Crystal Tully Cordova, Lonnie Sinigini, and of course, Governor Armijo. We also had a participation as well from Lieutenant Governor of Pojoaque Pueblo, Janelle Roybal, Ron Nebone of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Blaine Sanchez, as I mentioned, Sherry Catanach of the New Mexico Indian Affairs Department, Jason John, along with Crystal from the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources. So these people were all really instrumental in creating the program, bringing this event together, and it made for a wonderful 2 days of presentations as well as pre-conference field trips. I know I saw Dino Chavarria, and I just want to thank him again for inviting us onto Santa Clara Pueblo's homelands to see their forest restoration efforts after the result of the fire that devastated Santa Clara Canyon. We had over 260 participants. We had, as you can see, about 50 posters that were displayed, many by students. And we also had the gracious participation as well during one of our luncheons of the Pueblo's early childhood center dancers, as you can see in this photo. And over the course of this conference, we covered a lot of key topics ranging from the Amant water rights settlement, other New Mexico Indian water rights settlements, tribal infrastructure, data sharing and data sovereignty, drought and climate change impacts. And so there was a lot of wonderful content that you can find some of the speaker presentations and slides, poster abstracts from that conference. But even before this workshop, we knew that there'd be the need to continue discussion and continue to dig deeper into tribal water issues in New Mexico. And we had a chance over the intervening time between then and now. For example, in 2020, during our last water conference, we had a session here highlighting Navajo Nation and their efforts through organizations such as the Water Access Communications Group to help with some of these wicked water problems that exist on Navajo Nation. As a result of that, there were some breakout sessions that were held initially asking these questions of what can different groups do to help build tribal water capacity, for example, NGOs, universities, and what are some ways of engaging tribal communities for research or for the research needs that they see as critical. And from there, that has really what's brought us to this workshop today. I just want to take a second as well to highlight some other outreach efforts of the Water Institute. For example, our hosting of for the last, I guess it would be since 2016, the Animus and San Juan Watersheds Conference that has been held to highlight the long-term monitoring efforts and research following the Gold King mine spill. And one aspect of that in 2018, 2019, and virtually in 2020 were these community teach-ins that were hosted at Shiprock Chapter House in collaboration with Dr. Carletta Chief, in which presenters were able to give flash talks to community members, answer questions. And so I know I saw some of the members of that conference and people who've attended and participated here as well. So a big thank you to anyone who's participated in that. And so with that, I'll just say thank you again to the working group, to those of you for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing some of the great discussion later on in the breakout sessions.
All righty, thank you, Mark, for that perspective. And we're going to move right along to our last scheduled event before lunch. And this will be a panel that will be moderated by Representative Derek Lenty. And he was elected. I'll go ahead and introduce him, and hopefully Representative Lenty's out there. And oh, great, there you are. Good to see you. And I'll just do a quick introduction. And Representative Lenty, did you want me to introduce the panel, or did you want them to introduce themselves, or maybe you'd introduce them? What did you have in mind?
Good morning, Sam. If you don't mind introducing them.
Okay. If it's okay, I'll just kind of do that now, and then you guys can just have your discussion with all the introductions out of the way.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, great. So this will take a little while, but I think it's important to see who our panelists are. And first of all, our moderator, Derek Lenty, was elected in 2017 as a member of the New Mexico House of Representatives, District 65. He's in his second term and has new responsibilities as chairman of House Committee on Agriculture and Water Resources. He earned his BA in Intercultural Communications in English at UNM before going on to earn a JD at the UNM School of Law. Derek's the son of pueblos of Isleta and Sandia, and Representative Lenty, his wife Cassandra, and their children make their home in Sandia Pueblo, where he owns and operates Lenty Farms. Thank you very much for moderating our session today, Representative Lenty.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Okay, we have 4 panelists. Phoebe, Suina, are you out there? Okay, wonderful. Hi there.
How you doing? Good to see you, Representative Lenty.
So I'll introduce Phoebe. Let's see, Sharon, you're here, great. And we're also looking for Jose, if Jose's out there.
Thank you, Sam.
I hear Jose. And Devin, are you out there? Okay, good to see everybody. So I'll just run quickly through these introductions. Phoebe is the owner and project manager at High Watermark LLC. She's managed multi-million-dollar emergency and disaster assistance projects for FEMA, in addition to her previous career at the Department of Energy and Los Alamos National Laboratory. She's worked on post-Cerro Grande fire erosion, sediment control, debris flow, and flood hazard mitigation. Also worked on environmental compliance and environmental remediation for over 10 years on DOE and LANL projects. And she earned her bachelor's in environmental engineering and is a graduate degree in engineering management, all from Thayer School of Engineering at Dartmouth College. And she's from pueblos of San Felipe and Cochiti, and continues to assist and share her knowledge and skills with Pueblo communities. Thanks very much for being here, Phoebe. Okay, we're next gonna go to Dr. Jose Cerrato. Jose, nice to see you. His research is related to biogeochemical processes at the interface of water and energy, and he particularly works on radionuclides in the environment. He leads the H2O research group. This is where he was a postdoctoral research associate at Washington University in St. Louis. He's been a recipient of the OES-LES PAU Fulbright Scholarship. Congratulations, NSF Integrative Graduate Research Education Traineeship, and Oak Ridge University Ralph Poe Junior Faculty Award, and also the University of New Mexico Faculty of Color Research Award, and an NSF Career Award, which is a big deal. Thanks, Jose. Okay, next we have Sharon. Hi, Sharon. Sharon has worked for Pueblo governments for over 17 years. She's currently the planning program manager for Laguna Pueblo and was formerly a planner at Pueblo Sandia. She's also adjunct faculty at UNM in the Community and Regional Planning Department, where she teaches planning on Native American lands and Indigenous environmental planning. Sharon's been active in water planning in Mexico since 1996, emphasizing tribal engagement. Her doctoral dissertation focused on Native American and non-Native interactions in collaborative planning. Great. And finally, Devon, hi. Devon Aldridge is the Flood Risk Program Manager for Albuquerque District Corps of Engineers and New Mexico Silver Jackets Coordinator. And all the programs under her purview seek to increase flood risk awareness for communities, provide technical assistance, and build collaborative partnerships. She's currently has significant work ongoing with Navajo Nation, Tesuque Pueblo, and Alamo, New Mexico, and is always seeking opportunities to partner with others. She has a bachelor's in civil engineering from New Mexico State University, all right, with a focus in water resources, and a master's degree in statistical hydrology from Mississippi State. Okay, Representative Lente, it's your panel. Thank you.
Sam, thank you for doing that. I would have done it myself, but I don't have any of the information that you had. I know people by face and by name. I could have done that well, but not the background. But thank you so much, Sam, for doing that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me and inviting me to be a part of this fantastic panel, at least as a moderator. I think in terms of time, it's now 12 o'clock. We will go to about 12:30-ish with some Q&A with the panel itself. And then what I think we should do, or what I think is we want to do, is then open it up to some Q&A from the participants of the conference itself to ask your own of the panelists, and we'll go up until 12:50. And so with that, without further ado, I do have 3 questions that we have lined up, and I will go as I see each of you on my screen, and we'll go ahead and ask those questions, or unless you just want to raise your hand and let me know if you want to answer it, that'd be great too. So the first question is, what are some of the key distinctions in research collaborations that involve tribes compared to other communities that you have worked with? Example being, is there a framing of research that you have seen a difference in terms of organizations versus tribes, reciprocity, data sovereignty, free, prior, and informed consent matters, as well as governmental approval measures that are important as well? So that's the first question, and it is a mouthful. And I think in terms of putting people on the spot, if somebody wants to start off, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to hear from anyone that wants to speak first. And you can just take yourself off mute and go for it. Phoebe.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Lenti, and Coatzi Hopa. As was shared earlier, my background is working with a number of tribes and pueblos here in New Mexico, most really in the last 10 years after I left Los Alamos. And just what I've learned is no tribe or pueblo is the same. There's very unique governance structures within each pueblo. Even whether you have a constitutional tribe versus a traditional governance of appointment of leadership. And even amongst those that are traditional, there's variance in how the governance is. And I just shared that to start on because I think as we talk about tribes, but each one is a unique sovereign government structure as well. And I always like to say, as I work with tribes, is to respect everybody, respect all the staff, respect the leadership, because within our traditional structures, you really don't even know who may be one of leadership position internally. And so it's always respecting everybody. And for me, I try my best. I'm human too. So sometimes when we're trying to do something fast, I think that's also where we get caught up in maybe stepping on those lines of respect. And then, trying to move a project forward or an initiative forward as well. And so I guess for me, if you start out, or if I start out with that sense of respect, that helps me navigate and work with the communities that are unique, as I said earlier. And so over my last 10 years, and even before that, when I was up at the laboratory working with the 4 Accord Pueblos, was my first lesson, if you will, in terms of understanding how the uniqueness of each community and tribe. And so I just wanted to set that stage. I'm sure my colleagues will have more to talk about, but I really wanted to just talk about those basics. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe, for that insight. And for perspective purposes, you have always worked with tribes, or for the most part, have worked with tribes as an outside contractor, not as essentially like a tribal employee with your professional background, correct?
Yes, that's correct. But I should say also, being a member of San Felipe and Cochiti Pueblos, there's times when the tribal leaderships, whether it's a governor or council, have asked for my assistance. So even though, as we are raised, and I know yourself as well, our core values, Representative Lenti, when we're asked to serve, sometimes I do stand with our tribal leaders and governors to help advocate. So I kind of, in those situations, I feel like I have a quasi staff hat when I'm working with and at the direction and guidance of the leadership and the council. And I've been so honored and blessed to have a number of those positions and been asked to serve in those roles as well. And again, it's, pro bono. I just try to do my best for the communities. And also to answer your question a little bit further, Representative, I also, as we are raised as Pueblo people, we help all our sister Pueblos and our brothers and sisters across tribal communities. So sometimes I find myself, even though I'm not, just working with San Felipe or Cochiti, working with communities like even Jemez or Acoma, I've done some work with those other communities as well.
Thank you so much, Phoebe, for that insight. And where I was going with this is, I want to then go to Sharon, perhaps. And Sharon, I know that you've been a tribal employee, and it was mentioned Sandia Pueblo, and now you're at the Pueblo of Laguna. Can you provide a little bit of insight in terms of you being a Pueblo employee?
Yes, thank you, Representative Lente, and thanks, Phoebe, for kicking that off. I've really been thinking as you were talking and as Representative Lente was framing it, how we all really do come from very different backgrounds, and how when I was thinking about these questions, of course, my my thoughts about my responses were very different, not contradictory in any way, just quite different. And I appreciate you going first and framing it from your perspective, from the community. I think what stands out for me a lot in the question of research collaboration with tribes is really how the research questions get framed. And the issue of even how those questions are asked. And I think we had some great examples of that this morning where there were urgent needs, for example, related to water and COVID. And in that case, framing the research questions really is obvious. There's an immediate issue that has to be addressed. In a lot of other cases, in my experience, tribes are not always accustomed to framing information needs as research questions per se. And so defining them as research and reaching out to researchers may not be the first thing that comes to mind. So that can be an important distinction. Another element from the tribal side is really about the ownership of data and the sensitivity of data sovereignty, for a variety of reasons, including exploitation of tribal data in the past, and also just risks to tribal water rights. It's really important for tribes to maintain control of data, whereas in other research cases, science is considered a public process to a large extent, and universities operate on this principle, not necessarily of sharing all data immediately, but of using it for the public good. And it's a narrower focus for tribes in terms of that data. That also sort of leads into questions about researchers initiating research questions. I think in a perfect world, the tribes would always be the ones initiating the research questions and calling the shots about the ownership of data. But if that's not the case, then there are other questions that tribes may really want resolved before any research is done. For example, their consent, the ultimate ownership of that data, the recognition that data may belong to the tribe rather than an individual. I am a social science researcher, so there are other questions about approvals of use of data. Normally it would be an individual consenting, but it would often be the tribe as well, even if there's an individual interview. I don't want to take up too much time just with my responses. I have a lot more thoughts on this subject as well, but I think coming from the tribal side, but also wearing a research hat on the social science side, those are some of my thoughts on this question.
Dr. Housen, thank you for that insight. We really appreciate it. And now I want to go then to Devin. And the reason why I want to do this is because back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I used to work for Sandia Pueblo as well as a water resources then coordinator. And I was always told by our legal counsel, and now I understand why, and then also our tribal leadership, that we would never want to take federal money in regards to receiving data or research in regards to our water rights or water uses on the Pueblo, because then it's everybody's data. And so that was something that was ingrained into my mind. So can I ask you, Devin, then, working with the Army Corps of Engineers, what's your perspective? Devin, you seem to be muted. Okay, well, why don't we get that technical glitch fixed out? We can't hear you. And so maybe perhaps it doesn't show that you're muted. So I don't know what's going on. Perhaps it's with your computer. To be continued then. Let's go to Jose. Jose, good morning.
Good morning. So I thank all of you for setting up the stage. And well, I am a university professor of the University of New Mexico. So I am associated to different centers at the university. Center for Water and the Environment, the Superfund Research Center, and also of the Native Environmental Health Equities Center. And all of these centers actually are funded by federal money, which is an interesting, let's say, discrepancy from the comment that you made earlier, right? So a very interesting thing is that, on the data management part is that at least from NIH and NSF, also the National Institute of Health and the National Science Foundation, we have received very good empathy and support on understanding data integrity on the tribal side, let's say. And in that aspect, then that becomes less of a concern on us sharing something that hasn't been approved or that hasn't been shared by the tribes first, let's say, at least on my personal experience. I think that the challenge really becomes on how to best build those relationships of trust and clear communication so that when we do things from the scientific side, we are able to frame our science in a way that is useful to the communities and that is also respectful of the time frames that are necessary to build these communications. I think that is definitely a challenge, and in many levels when working with our tribal research. And I agree, with what Phoebe said at the beginning. So not all tribes are the same, right? I mean, that's of course a very important principle, as I would say that not every person is the same even, right? So we have to respect individuals for who they are and groups for who they are, and build those relationships carefully. So on doing that and also recognizing my own limitations, I am in a personal campaign, let's say, and fight with myself on trying, and I say myself, but I know many other colleagues are in a similar situation, trying to improve my ability to communicate clearly the science with the community and with the federal agencies and the different parties. So I'm going to cite my good friend John Inez from Navajo Nation, who's told me something very important that I learned. And he told me, Jose, it is like when, I don't know, like this 1700s, where you had Spaniards and you had British and you have the natives and you had all different layers of different languages and antagonistic positions many times, and having to come to the place of communicating and getting the message across. I think that happens a lot in certain situations of water research. I'm gonna speak on my own personal ground because I work with mining legacy, which has to do, of course, with toxic substances. That's not an easy subject to address by any means. It's always very full of controversy, let's say, but the best way of doing it, in my opinion, is doing it by putting honesty and integrity on the first plane and trying to do things in the best interest of the tribes. And I think by trying to do that, at least trying, I'm not saying that we are always successful in doing that. I think that is a good start, right? Because then you get to build that trust. And I think that another thing that I want to convey is that as a university professor, I always consider myself a public employee, right? Because we are receiving taxpayer money from every person from the state of New Mexico. And of course, our tribal people are essential citizens of New Mexico. So we are here to serve the tribes. And I would like the tribes to see the universities as a resource. And one of the most important things that I do in my work, more than the science on its own as fundamental science, because that is an added value in my opinion, but the best thing that I do and the thing that I honestly take the best pride and satisfaction from is that we have been able to train tribal students that I hope can go back to the tribes, and if not back to the tribes, that can go to important positions of power, like Deb Haaland is right now, right? But we need to train these people. And I think that's a very important mission that universities have, and that I hope that everyone in this meeting can hopefully help us carry forward, because we really need that. And to me, the biggest satisfaction is when I see Native American scientists, which you can count with your fingers, but when they are there, like you mentioned, Carletta Schiff or others that are coming out and doing amazing things, you know, then that is really a very powerful thing that is happening right now. And that I hope, you know, I am 42 now, I hope to live enough to retire in some decades. And I really hope that I can see with my eyes that when I retire, the people that have gone through our programs are in positions of power doing amazing things, right? And then I will die very happily. So
Well,
that's all I have to say for now.
Well said, Jose. Thank you for your answers. It makes me want to go back to school. You know, the title of this session is Best Practices for Building Partnerships and Conducting Water Research with Tribes, right? And so in many of the comments made, that there's always the mention made of a distrust, I guess a history of distrust in terms of what we being Native Americans or tribes or tribal governments, however you want to phrase it, have dealt with, I guess, historically in terms of the treatment and such. And so I think as we are now in 2021, and as I had mentioned to many of you earlier this morning, is that I was always told to kind of proceed with caution and don't trust people because they may use the data against us or against you. So I want to swing back around and I see a chat from Devin. I'm called into the number. Okay. As soon as she gets back with us, we promise we'll go to Devin. But I want to cover something real quick. So then, in terms of mending this distrust, or being able to provide tribes, tribal nations, pueblos, whatever you want to call it, what aspects of research collaborations with tribes do all of you think are in need of most improvement? And how would you propose to make those types of improvements? And an example given is honoring cultural values in terms of you know, throwing that distrust out the window and moving forward in a more, I think, collaborative, objective way with tribes and the types of services that you want to provide, whether as a consultant, whether as a tribal employee, whether as a university or as the federal government. And so does somebody want to start that off? How do we mend those things of the past, and what type of research collaborations with tribes are in most need of improvement, and how do we improve that? Whoever.
I'm happy to start on that, Representative.
All right.
Thanks. I think overall, you know, some of the things that we've really been discussing are those relationships between tribes and researchers. And I think in many cases, there's an absence of an ongoing relationship to understand on both sides, to understand what the needs are and to understand how the research can assist that. So one of the things that can help support that are more workshops like this, but I think on an ongoing basis, making sure that research is communicated to tribes, whether it's tribal research or other research, so there's a clear understanding of what that might look like and how it could be beneficial. And also then helping tribes know who they might be able to reach out to over time and what the possibilities are for that. I also think on the tribal side, preparedness for research-oriented relationships could be really beneficial. So in advance, being prepared to set up those relationships and formalize them, approve specific research topics, having a formal process in place so that if there is a research need, the research can get going rather than spending additional years developing that process for approving the research on the fly. And there are models out there for that can be used to help define the research and then work through those approvals. And sometimes there are institutional review boards that are in place for that, but those are not always set up to be really culturally workable either, in terms of the building trust and building relationships. So also making sure to return to tribes with research results. And of course, the good examples that we're hearing, that's set up from the start. But if a researcher is interested, then, really reporting back to the tribes and sharing that in a way that's community oriented could really be beneficial. I was looking at the website for the metals research that's being done at Laguna's Superfund site for this. And I thought, this is a really good example of a project that helps Laguna. But looking at the website, it's not necessarily set up for a Laguna audience. There's some jargon on there that doesn't resonate necessarily with community members. So just little adjustments like that can really help as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor. Someone want to take a crack at it?
So this is Jose again. I just want to follow up because I am in a similar frequency, let's say. So I think some of the improvements that could be made have to do first, I'm gonna say, taking some of the comments that Phoebe made at the beginning. I'm gonna give you an example. I've seen programs from different organizations that fund tribal initiatives that, let's say would open a call in, I don't know, I'm gonna just put a hypothetical example. There's a call open to submit a proposal in August. Then you get the project and you have to do it in a year and that's it. So super unrealistic timelines, right? Because it's impossible to put a proposal in 3 months if you're gonna develop a serious relationship with the community, and especially going back to the comments earlier, to set up those questions, not from you, but to set them from a community context. That building those questions that come from a community context takes the time for the researchers to go and build that, right? And then once you get that money for those projects to end in a year, and that's it. To me, that's so unreasonable, but unfortunately so frequently seen, that has to be improved, in my opinion. Just the way that these projects are framed, from the good intention, of course, of whoever wants to fund them, to have that money available, but unfortunately that the timelines just are not realistic. So that's one thing that has to be improved. I think another one is, and I like John Naranjo has a comment here in the chat saying that we need to build on healthy relationships and communication to agree and disagree, to build trust. Water is life. I agree with that. And I'm gonna say an example. This is a personal failure that I'm going to share with you guys. With my good friends from the New Mexico, from the Laguna Natural Resources and Environment Department. We have worked together because, as you were saying, Sharon, the University of New Mexico has a Superfund Center. And I have been very humbled by, I'm not gonna say names, but by my friends telling me, Jose, you have to go back and you have to share this before you can submit the paper. Jose, you cannot publish this thing and then just send this to us. And they're right. And I have, of course, apologized for that mistake. And I'm trying to improve on those timelines, right? To communicate the results adequately to the community, to get feedback, and then hopefully to make this information useful. All right, so I think those, again, it comes down to the timelines, to building a timeline, also to communicate back the results to the community. And I'm gonna go to what I said earlier, improving on communicating the science, right? So I'm not gonna go and say, well, uranium element 92 in the periodic table has a concentration of 200 micrograms per liter, which is above the maximum contaminant limit, blah, blah, blah. So you see, I said like a lot of words that I'm sure that are not taking at all into consideration the tribal context, right? So Kelsey Herzer, who is here in this workshop, coincidentally, she is an undergraduate student that has been working with my group. And I'm working with Kelsey and Derek Capitan, who is a student from Laguna, actually, that is an undergraduate student, and also the New Mexico Natural History Museum and the Southwest Research and Information Center, trying to really debug our horrible language, right, to improve communication. So I think that's a personal challenge, and those are things that we need to improve.
Thank you, Jose, for that insight. Let's go to Phoebe. Ms. Swino, what are you thinking?
Just real fast, can y'all hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now, yes. Welcome to the session.
I'm so sorry, thank you.
Okay, I hope you can hear us, and then we're gonna go to Phoebe, then I wanna circle back with you, Devin, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Representative Lente, and thank you, Sharon and Jose, for your comments on this question and your responses. And I'm looking at the chat here, Olivia's comment about this worldview, Western science or mainstream science and Indigenous perspective. And I know many of you out there have heard me say this, those that I know, our people here in New Mexico, our Indigenous people, we are the first scientists. We are the first data gatherers. We have data that goes back since time immemorial, and often that is negated. So as we move forward to build trust among mainstream researchers, there also has to be that mutual respect and acknowledgement and incorporation of what the community, if they want to, provide some of the data that they've gathered since time immemorial. But because it's not written down, many times that's kind of negated or pushed aside or not even heard. So just like we communicate, if we don't listen to each other, that's part of building that trust. So listening, and as my grandpa used to say, not to go in one ear and out the other, but really for it to come into your gut, your heart, your mind of whatever you hear. And oftentimes when it goes in one ear out the other, as you can tell with your little kids or whoever you're working with or your spouse or partner, there ends up being a conflict or mistrust. So if we can also listen to each other, as well as not negate that data, if they want to share, if a tribal community wants to share that information. But once they do, I think it's wholeheartedly important to really listen and incorporate that knowledge, that wisdom, and that expertise. When it is pushed aside and you go forward with your research or your project or initiative by not really acknowledging and respecting, we call it mani, that information, that lesson, that message, then you're moving forward, and that right there is a break of trust. And so as researchers come in or outsiders come in, once you do that, and our elders, they do not forget, and our tribal leaders do not forget. And so then you're in a situation where then you have to rebuild that trust. And often we don't realize how important that is, but in our core values and in our Pueblo teachings, when that trust is broken, you really have to work double time to really rebuild that trust. And sometimes we don't even realize that we've stepped on and walked the wrong because again, these things are unwritten, especially in our more traditional communities where protocols that are very strict, many of those formal strict protocols are not written. And so when you have a misstep, you don't know it, like Jose was mentioning earlier, has probably been mentioned, you have to do this. Well, it's not written anywhere, right? But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. So I just wanted to share that perspective, again, from a tribal perspective. And I'm always learning. That's the other thing. We come in and we're always learning. Every day I talk to my elders or my communities. I'm always learning. What are their priorities? What are their concerns? And then that helps also to frame those research questions, how to frame moving forward in a respectful and positive way on the initiative. So thank you, Representative Lenti.
Phoebe, thank you so much for that insight. Extremely important, extremely, invaluable when you're speaking about the delicate relationship that is with one, whether you're an outside contractor, an employee, or a university, or even going now to Devon with the federal government in terms of how do you build those relationships and how sensitive do you treat them? How delicate really are they at the end of the day, so that those issues of distrust or mistrust are then being able to be mended, and then we can move to a different time and a different age. And so Devon, good morning or good afternoon at this point. Happy to have you with us. And I know that you've been with us the whole time, so I'm pretty sure you heard the entire conversation. But I want to go back then to the discussions that we had in regards to the research collaborations, and then we moved then into how to make these collaborations, how to improve on those collaborations, and what we should do to improve them, period. And so with your work with the federal government, what's your experience? I mean, you're our trustee, so we should trust you with everything, right? But in reality, can we, do we, should we? And so can you give us some insight?
Me personally, yes, you should definitely trust me. The federal government, I'm not so sure. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you for that. I apologize for the audio issues. I'm now joined on my iPhone 5, so I hope everyone can hear me okay. So I know we're short on time. I'm going to try to get to both things, kind of aggregate my answers a little bit and get to both things quickly. One thing I think as the federal government we need to be really cognizant of is traditionally providing either incomplete or incorrect information to the tribes. And I think that really stems mostly from a lack of interagency participation and collaboration. So that's across federal, state, local, and tribal agencies. So one of the things that I really seek to do in my program is to, and I'm just going to shamelessly plug the Silver Jackets here, you know, if you're interested in interagency collaboration. Phoebe's smiling because she's one of my partners on that team. But one of the reasons I think this really hurts the relationship between the federal government and the tribe is because, one, when we don't have the authority to do something, we're not providing alternatives to let them know who might have the authority to do that. So building these relationships across other federal agencies, across state agencies, counties, you know, communities is really, really important because there may come a request, right, from a community that we don't have the authority to do. And instead of just saying like, I'm sorry, we can't do that, we should be able to provide them with a contact from one of these other agencies to really complete that request, right? You don't just leave it hanging. And I think that would help. I think also understanding the future uses of any study. So obviously as the federal government, we, as a district, we don't do research in the traditional way that many of you are speaking about, but speaking in terms of studies, you know, we need to make sure that we're understanding what the final goal and what the future goals of any of that work may be. This also relates to the interagency piece and the interagency communication, because we may just be providing floodplains, for instance. That might be the request right on its face is for floodplains. But what we're not seeking out to understand or to learn is that those floodplains then are going to be used for residential development, or those floodplains are going to be used for a LOMAR or CLOMAR or something like that. In this instance, we need to be finding that information out well ahead of time and then tapping into our interagency partners, making sure that they are included in that process the whole time. So if the goal is to be for a residential development, we need to make sure HUD is involved. We need to make sure that Navajo Housing Authority is involved, or wherever the case may be. If it's for Clomar, we need to make sure FEMA is consulting on that project, so that whatever products we are providing under our authorities can actually be used, right? We don't want to hand anything over. Meeting our partners' goals is so much more important than getting work. And we don't want to hand anything over just for the sake, or do any work just for the sake of doing work. We want to meet their long-term goals. And I would also say, as a federal agency, we need to be honest if our authorities do not meet their long-term goals. So maybe we can do a piece of that, but we need to be honest and say, here's what we can provide, and here's where our assistance stops. But we need to get NRCS involved, because they have a program that can help you complete the rest of the goal. So that's kind of, I know I took it in a little bit different direction, but that's how I see one way we can really kind of develop this trust and make sure that we're meeting both long and short-term goals for our tribal partners.
Devin, thank you so much for that insight. We really appreciate you and now your sound and your audio being here with us. Thank you so much. And I know I mentioned earlier that we would probably have a Q&A with the panel or with the folks on the call or in the convention at the conference at 12:30. We'll push that back a little bit, and we'll probably have maybe about 10 minutes worth of that at this point. But I do see, for instance, Carlo has a question, a follow-up to Phoebe's comments. And so we will get there, Carlo. And if anyone else maybe has a question they want to ask any one of our panelists before we're out of time, please think of that now, put it in the chat box, and we'll get back to you. And so in wrapping all of this up, I mean, it seems like all of us have mentioned in some way or another the importance of communication, the importance of trust, the importance of being able to look and be objective and be realistic in terms of goals. And at the end of the day, understanding who the end product is meant for, right? And that is for the tribe. And I know that, let's see, who is it? The gentleman that John Naranjo mentioned that water is life, and absolutely, in matters of water and its scarcity, and that water is life, for tribes to take that with the utmost importance and hold their cards closest to their chest, so to that they don't just allow anybody to know what they're doing or how much they're using or for what purposes, is extremely important to them. And I think for in my experience, that has been the disconnect, that people want to know just more of how to use it culturally, how to use it religiously, how much do you use, and this, then, and for some of those questions, it turns people off immediately. And so in each of your respective work, I think it's extremely important, and I think all of you have provided an insight in terms of what you have seen that has been the disconnect, what you have seen that maybe has worked, and what maybe you will see that will work in the future. And so I want to circle back then to what Carlo had put into our chat box. And again, I would encourage anyone else that has a question for any one of our panelists, feel free to write that in now. But to follow up with Phoebe's comments, how much could the state benefit from environmental/traditional indigenous techniques and sciences if trust is established and shared? Also, how do you make sure that this information is not misused or used without permission? Phoebe, are you able to follow up on that?
Thank you, Representative Lenti. Yes, and it goes back, it's a combination of what Jose mentioned earlier in his lesson with one of the pueblos, is you always have to, the information that is gathered in these research, or even when you're working on, an article or paper or whatever, it is really the information of the pueblo and the tribe. For me, and so this is just how I was brought up, is, like even on this panel, I go to the governors, my governors, and I say, is it okay if I sit on these panels, and to always go through that protocol and that request for permission, if you will. And again, those are unwritten, but that is that sense of respect that I had talked about earlier. So if you will, I just bring it down to the individual, you share something with a friend. And if that friend goes and shares that information to everybody and their, and their friends and the whole community, your trust is broken with that friend. So then you're going to be more hesitant to share that information. And then another person comes along and your trust is broken again if they do the same thing. So then as I tell my kids, mistake one, you got to learn from it. Mistake two, by the third time, you better not be making that mistake again. And that's where our tribal communities then come. And to be honest, federal government, state government have made multiple faux pas or mistakes and broken those trusts. So as we go forward is always go back to the tribal leadership or your point of contact to get that permission to just have that. It's a very formal protocol, but just have that respect. And like my examples to the individual, just think of yourself. You wouldn't want information about yourself out there without having that layer of, yeah, go ahead, share it. So thank you, Representative. I hope that's helpful.
Well said, Ms. Sweeney. Thank you for clarifying that and go into further detail about that. I am now looking at our agenda and it looks like I only had till 12:35 and for some reason I put 12:50. So I've taken up lunchtime and I apologize completely. So at this point, let's wrap this up. I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry, Sam, for going into your lunch hour. But this is a super important topic as we look into jurisdictional issues and cross-jurisdictional issues, especially with something so important as water data and water research, something that is very important to tribes and will promise our existence forever. And so it's that importance that our tribal leaders put into this type of research. That is why sometimes things just don't work out when we talk about research. So with that being said, Ms. Sweeney, Dr. Hausum, Jose, and Devin, thank you so much for being on the panel this afternoon. It's been an honor to be a moderator for this session. Sam and Mark, at this point in time, I don't want to take up any more of your lunchtime, so I will then hand it back to you. Honor and a pleasure again to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Representative Lente and the panel. Really appreciated. Great talk and great points. Those we can have a lot to take to heart for the future. So I think what we'll do, Mark, if it makes sense to you, is we'll just skip the intro of the breakout sessions and just really encourage everybody to show up after lunch, which is going to be at 1:20 for our breakout sessions. And we have a lot of great content from the facilitators and also the chance that's so important to hear your perspectives. So without further ado, does that make sense, Mark? We can just go right into the video and the lunch.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. We'll have a chance to catch participants up on the breakout sessions once we finish with our little brown bag lunch session.
Alrighty, great. So I guess I'll let you take it away, Mark, with the next steps for the afternoon.
Okay, so just a second here. Let me share my screen. Okay, so yes, as Sam mentioned, there's a video that we'll be showcasing here in just a few minutes, and then it'll be followed by a panel moderated by Dr. Lonnie Sinigini. But I guess first I would just ask if, since you were so involved in the production of this video, Crystal, if you just want to give a little intro or some background information while I cue things up.
Okay, sounds great, Mark. So as I had mentioned earlier in the day, this is an opportunity to be able to witness the work that the Navajo Nation has done in collaboration with different partners to be able to address water access challenges in the Navajo Nation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Definitely realizing we still are in a pandemic, but we thought it was good, even from a historical perspective, to be able to document the work that is going on by different partners. You'll hear different examples from some of our academic institutions, nonprofit organizations, federal agencies, as well as our own tribal enterprises within the Navajo Nation, to be able to gain a better understanding of the work that has been done to be able to address these issues. And it's made by a Navajo filmmaker, Real Indian Pictures. It was important for us to choose a Navajo filmmaker because that perspective of growing up within the nation, having an understanding of what the water challenges are in the Navajo Nation, we believe would be able to best tell the story. We're appreciative to the funding for support for this video by the University of Arizona Agnes Nelms Howry program. But that's the brief introduction that I wanted to provide. Thank you.
Through the power of Navajo Nation advocacy, the Navajo Nation is the largest land-based tribe in the United States and has grown to cover more than 27,000 square miles that spans into the state of Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. The magnitude of the COVID-19 pandemic and its massive harsh impacts is well known on the Navajo Nation, with a higher death rate per capita than the rest of the United States, which may have been lower if more tribal members had access to potable water. Almost 40% of Navajo households lack access to clean water. The pre-existing clean water access gaps and the water quality challenges in the Navajo Nation make it impossible to follow the CDC guidelines on COVID-19 prevention. A group of collaborating partners from dozens of state and federal agencies, along with nonprofits, universities, and philanthropies, are working together with the Navajo Nation to address water access challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic.
On the Navajo Nation, COVID-19 has amplified food, energy, and water insecurities. On the Navajo Nation, more than 30% of the people do not have access to running water. In addition, poverty rates are more than twice the state of Arizona. Only 13 grocery stores serve the Navajo people. And so with the COVID-19 pandemic, it has amplified these food, energy, water insecurities.
And part of the Navajo Water Access Group, which was established in April 2020. It's a joint effort between the IHS and CDC, those two federal organizations. We were charged with a responsibility to collaborate resources and basically look for external funding, see how we can address to mitigate COVID-19.
Early on in the pandemic, we know that CDC came out with the recommendations to frequently wash your hands, and that's a luxury, right? Because a lot of people on the Navajo Nation actually don't have access to running water. Giving these recommendations to families that don't have that luxury to just go to the sink and get running water and wash their hands as frequently as recommended, we launched a new effort to build and deliver portable hand washing stations to desperate Navajo families on the reservation. And now we've actually reached over 500 families that needed these portable hand washing stations. And we collaborated with several of the partners in the Water Access Coordination Group to identify families. I had mentioned these point of use water filters, and we've been able to give those out, and that has been sort of eye-opening, not only for us, but for the people that we've been doing these demonstrations with and giving them these water filters. A lot of our previous work has been just research, trying to figure out what's going on, but actually making that difference and seeing that the difference in a family's life of going, oh my gosh, we don't have to go and buy water. We don't have to drive 3-4 hours to go buy drinking water. We can just filter it here and feel good about the water that we're drinking.
Also through water hauling efforts, through organizations like Dig Deep. They are hauling water to different residents and being able to distribute water in a way to people who do not have access to a vehicle to be able to haul water.
I have been with the Navajo Water Project for approximately 5 years, and we do water access projects across the Navajo Nation. We started in New Mexico, and now not only are we working in the Theru area there, but we're also working in Dilcon and Nutsitzon on the Arizona and Utah border. Up until the pandemic, we had been doing long-term water access projects, which involved us working with families who are living off-grid, and we were installing home water systems, which are comprised of a 1,200-gallon cistern, and we would replenish these systems monthly with water deliveries. So that way the water is coming from a safe route. And what these systems do is bring both hot and cold running water into homes. And the next steps for us are helping families get hooked up to actual NTUA water lines. Things shifted for us obviously very heavily in March of 2020. And we got involved with the Water Access Coordination Group by invitation. We started out actually by distributing emergency bottled water, but that was something that was pretty short term and something that we didn't want to do for months on end, as obviously bottled water is not the best. Now what we're doing is 275 gallon storage tank drops and continuing to replenish those with water. So that way families are still getting safe running water. They're outdoors, obviously not inside like our normal work, but they're coming from safe water sources, and they are allowing families to shelter in place and to not have that extra burden of spending money when many people are losing jobs and not having extra economic sources.
We became involved in the Navajo Water Access early on. We had data in our data system that it indicated the most number of homes without piped water existed on the Navajo reservation. And as a result of that, there was immediate concerns with the ability for those homes to continue to gain access to some sort of safe water source during the COVID-19 outbreak.
I'm glad that through coordinated efforts, like through the CARES Act funding that the Indian Health Service has received, that we're able to have 59 of these transitional watering points that have been installed in areas that are now bringing water closer to residents who did not previously have close watering points.
With this virus, it's such a beautiful day, and it seems like there's nothing out there of that magnitude. The virus, attacking people, but it's out there. A lot of the people that are able to come that don't have running water can come right here and get water. A couple of our workers from the chapter will open that during the week so that they can come during those hours that it's going to be open and they can get water here.
We also, a part of this IHS CARES Act funding, have been able to continue to distribute 37,000 storage containers for water. People can store it at their homes, and then also 3.5 million doses of water disinfection so that people can safely store their water.
We have open 106 water points where there's water being subsidized for delivery with the containers. And it's ongoing, the reporting on that. So our estimate is as high as 37,000. We will see how many containers we distribute and water we supply, as we continue to monitor that.
obviously, the work that we've done, that the university has done in collaboration with the Navajo Nation historically, makes clear to us that the problems of the water infrastructure and access didn't begin with COVID. They were there before, and they're going to be there after COVID. COVID made everything worse and more visible, and also so many of the water sources on the nation that had been compromised historically through the legacy of mining. You know, we think of COVID as having amplified and aggravated something that's been a problem for a long time. And the teams have been very conscious of trying to address both the short-term needs, but to be thinking about systemic long-term needs at the same time.
In the water access project on the Navajo, we specifically termed the new water points as transitional water points because they are not intended as a long-term solution. They are a transition to something better that we hope to work together with the tribe to identify what that is. And we're in the process of that right now. The level of urgency associated with the water access project is important, but frankly, it shouldn't have taken this to get us to this place. People living without water in their homes is an emergency every day. This is a lesson learned that we don't have to revisit another national pandemic to kind of get this level of collaboration, that we will just take what we've built right now and begin to kind of strengthen that and codify that as this is the way things should work.
For those people that are just too far away from a system to make it practical and extend, miles and miles and miles of pipeline to them, they're often given what's called a cistern system, where they have a 1,000-gallon tank in the ground. They still have to haul water, but if it can be powered up, can pump into the home. They can have plumbing. They can have a wastewater outlet, and they can try to get a semblance of normalcy in the home, but they still have to have a clean source of water.
There are many homes that could benefit from a cistern system that would provide indoor running water. By adding on-site wastewater disposal through installing septic tanks and drain fields, these homes are able to have complete plumbing facilities that include bathrooms and kitchens. The Indian Health Service, with the support of the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps, assisted the Navajo Department of Water Resources by collecting data needed to design and install cisterns, septic tanks, and drain fields for these homes.
But we need to check the soil to see how well it will drain, because that'll determine how big or small we make the field. You wet the soil, you'll find, and if you can hold it in a ball, it's not sand.
We also mark out if there's a clean out that shows that there's an existing bathroom inside. We'll mark where the clean out is located. We'll identify a spot for the cistern. We want to make sure that somewhere that the homeowner can pull up to and readily fill with water.
And I think what would be really awesome is post-pandemic, and when things start to slow down, if this sort of group can continue to work together in this kind of collaborative nature. Normally these different types of group of people wouldn't really work on a project together like they did with the WACG. How that sharing of information or sharing of what work was being done or what work was thought about being done, how that kind of communication can really continue the enhancement of addressing water access on Navajo.
We have over mapped to date 521 abandoned uranium mines across the Navajo Nation, and it's important to think about how those abandoned uranium mines impact the water quality as well. And so through these partnerships, we're able to think about technologies that can address different water quality issues. We're able to partner with people to be able to address infrastructure across the Navajo Nation, and it's important to think about, through these collaborative efforts, we're able to do more together.
It's been a complete honor on my part to be able to have been invited in to the Navajo Nation to assist with this problem, and I feel kind of privileged to be having been at the seat to be able to help to direct this work.
We're hopeful again that we have the team. We learned from all the various organizations that helped out. Kudos to all of them for doing that, direct services being given. Those organizations that have actually used those dollars that are coming in for the Navajo people to improve their quality of life. Thank you so much for the awesome work that you all have done in partnership with the Navajo Nation government.
We've been really fortunate to be a part of this big effort, and it's been something that I know is not just going to end when the pandemic ends, but it's going to be something that carries out throughout our work over the next years to come.
The water issue is no short-term problem that can be fixed in a matter of months, no matter how much money you put towards it, that these are really long-term problems that need long-term solutions. And if a group can keep the energy to have the desire to work together like it was shown these past few months, I think that there's going to be a whole range of possibilities and projects that will be enhanced by that kind of effort.
We're on the IHS project, so we have 56 homes. That's where the sewer line connection is right here. That's the clean out, and then we went from there, excavation through here, and we got the septic tank in.
So we looked at their needs list. There was like over 800 homes that had been deemed feasible for a cistern system, but had not been funded. We looked at that. We came up with some criteria about the worst needs, those that also need plumbing, and we pared it down to about 339 that met the criteria. Then we gave that to NECA and said, how many physically can you get done within the target time frame? The time frame was August 1st to the end of the year. They came up with 150 that they felt they could construct. We got out there moving, and we were able to complete. We have a target of completing about 108 of those at this point. There's about 80, I think there's 90 of them that are in service right now. They're functioning. Everybody liked the partnership. We worked closely with the Division of Community Development because they were using their CARES funds to build the additions and the plumbing, and those were paired up with the homes that we were serving. So those projects were going simultaneously, but they're being very closely coordinated so that we got a particular home, all the pieces that they needed.
I think the Navajo Nation Water Access Coordination Group is an excellent model that supports collaboration with Navajo Nation entities so that we can collectively bring our resources and our data and our minds together to address a pressing need, especially during this pandemic with the lack of access to water. And so there's a need for that quick mobilization, emergency response. And I think it was an excellent model to do that quickly, to bring together collaborative partners with the Navajo Nation that can talk about these pressing needs on a really quick pace and to address this immediate need.
So look what we're going through. Sandstone, lime, and they're all different types and layers. So all the homes we went through, they're all like this. It's really hard on the equipment. So right now, the Wagner maintenance guy, he's working on that equipment now. And then he's going to be working on this one again. That's what we're waiting on right now.
Our group, being that we're comprised of construction individuals, experts, professionals in this field, was invited to participate with the coordination, water access coordination group to help with the consulting, advising, and connections to whether it's a contractor, subcontractor, supplier, various vendors to help complete the mission and goals of providing safe water access to the Navajo Nation.
Here we installed the cistern tank, water, fresh water, and then the septic tank, then the drain field. And then the solar panel.
We have many partners helping us out, partners like Indian Health Services, of course the Navajo Nation and their divisions, Division of Community Development, and many other organizations out there that are providing water to our citizens. But of course, we want infrastructure built. I mean, if an organization is hauling water for a family, that's going to have to continue unless there's permanent infrastructure. We did some extensions, water line extensions. We did some cisterns with the help of NECA, Navajo Engineering Construction Authority, Navajo Tribal Utility Authority.
We do utility lines like sewer lines, water lines. At this home, we have constructed the sewer line, and then we installed the precast septic tank. Now we're tapping into a community lagoon. The homeowners, they can start draining right away as far as sewer. We just recently completed the water line. It comes off the main line on that side, which goes to the water tank up here. Off of that same line, we're also sharing the new water line with the school down here.
Right now, we're just putting in a 2-inch meter going into the Cameron School. Hopefully, once we get this installed, they're gonna be running off of this here. They're gonna have both the NTOA's water going in and their own right here. So that's what we're doing right here.
This pandemic that we're going through, this is one of the extreme viruses in our generation that has snuck into our homes, our communities, and our nation. And we're learning a lot. And we're learning a lot that infrastructure needs to be improved. Of course, we talked about water. We also got to talk about electricity. Sometimes you're going to have to utilize that electricity to move water into one community, right? Pump stations and all. So there's a need for electricity.
Right here, we call this machine a trencher. It cuts up the rocks. What he's doing now is he's cutting a trench to bury the power cable underneath this power line.
Then all these years, then they'll run in water, how long? Don't get electric, then so the ocean TV. Yeah. It depends on what's on the king. I suppose it's on the ocean. On that link.
right, well, thank you so much for allowing us to share this video today, Crystal. I wanted to take the chance now to introduce our post-video Q&A panel. So I'll start out by introducing our moderator and then move on to the panelists as well. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Lonnie Sinjini. She's an associate professor in community and regional planning at the University of New Mexico. Lonnie is Diné and Filipino and was born and raised in New Mexico. Lonnie received a BS in environmental science, a BA in Native American studies, and a Master of Water Resources degree from the University of New Mexico. Following her studies at UNM, she received a PhD in earth and environmental science with a dissertation in hydrology from New Mexico Tech. Lonnie's expertise is in mountain and watershed hydrology. Her research focuses on groundwater and surface water interactions in semi-arid mountainous watersheds and impacts of climate change on mountainous watersheds. She's had previous experience collaborating with other tribes and communities in New Mexico in various environmental work she has done and hopes to further collaborate with more Indigenous communities and New Mexican communities. So welcome formally to the workshop, Lonnie. We've already introduced Crystal Tully Cordova of the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources, Water Management Branch. So I'll take the chance then now to introduce Professor Toni Massaro. She currently serves as the director of the Agnes Nelms Howry Program on Social and Environmental Justice at the University of Arizona. She received her BS from Northwestern University and obtained her law degree from the College of William and Mary. Massaro joined the faculty at the University of Arizona College of Law in 1989, served as Dean of the College of Law from 1999 to 2009 as the first woman to hold that post. Professor Massaro currently teaches constitutional law, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and equal protection. And finally, Captain David Harvey. He is Deputy Director of the Division of Sanitation Facilities Construction at the Indian Health Service in Rockville, Maryland. He provides leadership and oversight on data, guidelines, and interagency coordination for an environmental health program supporting American Indian and Alaska Native tribes with the needs identification, planning, design, and construction of water, wastewater, and solid waste facilities. In April 2020, Captain Harvey led the formation of the Navajo Nation COVID-19 Water Access Coordination Group, a group formed to increase water access to quality water to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus across Navajo Nation. The group includes members from Navajo Nation government, Navajo Nation utility and construction authorities, the federal government, state governments, and nonprofit organizations. This group is focused on identifying, acquiring, prioritizing, and using available resources to increase access to quality water for tribal homes using data to identify and design interventions. So thank you all so much, and I'll turn it over to you, Lonnie.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm just going to give another quick introduction. Yate Sh'e Lonnie Sinijini Yinishia, Filipino Nishla, Tachini Bashichin, Filipino Deshache, Sitnat Jini Dashnala. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this panel in this question and answer section. I also wanted to mention that I am also a commissioner on the Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission. And so before we get started with our Q&A session, I just wanted to thank Crystal, Tony, and Captain Harvey for all the work you've done in helping to meet the needs on the Navajo Nation, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. And before we get started, I'm going to ask an initial question for the panel, and as you know, as the panelists are answering the questions, I'd like anyone who would like to, or anyone from the audience who would like to ask a question to also, you can put the question in the chat or raise your hand using the Zoom function, and I will call on you to ask your question. So my first question is just to ask you all to further introduce yourselves, if there's anything more that you would like to add, and if you could share any initial thoughts and reflections on your participation in the water access coordination group, and also in production, share your thoughts on the film and your participation in the production of the film. Again, thank you. And whoever would like to go first can go ahead.
Crystal, I would say.
Right, we're pointing at Crystal. This way.
So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be able to share the work that we've been collaboratively doing together. We definitely appreciate that. This film can also be viewed later if you want to share it with others on YouTube. If Mark, sorry, could share that in the chat, that would be awesome. But really, this was an opportunity to be able to work across different partnerships. Collaboration has been key to be able to address water access challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic, and continues to be key because within the tribe, we have limited capacity to do all the work that we would love to do. We have funding resources, we have limited resources, we also have building challenges as well. And so it's important to think that although maybe adding more people may not be very helpful for us as well, because, space issues. So it's important to think about the partnership. I'm glad that we have Tony Massaro as well as Captain Harvey here today to be able to really discuss the partnership that has occurred not only between the Indian Health Service, but also with an academic institution like the University of Arizona, particularly the Agnes Nelms Howry program. It did mention that funding for this video was from that program, but in addition to that, Nikki had mentioned some research that had been done as far as water quality mapping. That effort has been provided by the program as well, the Agnes Nelms Howry program. In addition to that, we have a water management library with the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources. I mentioned that we have building space issues, and our building that I was in, as well as the library was in, was condemned. And so through this effort of collaboration, we as occupants of that building had to be able to leave just before the pandemic started, so around February. But we have very important historical documents that are there. And so the University of Arizona, as well as the College of Law, is helping us to be able to not only store those historical documents, but also provide an opportunity to digitize historical documents that we have. So those are just some examples, and continuation with IHS, we're progressing forward to think about what that transition of those transitional watering points can look like. During this unprecedented time, we continue to learn as we go and try to work collaboratively together during this time period that has been very trying for all of us. But I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I guess I can go next. Thanks. Thank you, Lonnie and Crystal, Mark, for having me here today. I've been learning during this conference already. The IRD presentation was great. I got the people hooked up with our, hopefully with our New Mexico office there to learn about some partnerships with them for internships. As well as the Army Corps of Engineer rep that was on there. I think that would be a great addition to a federal work group that we have here in DC on focusing on tribal infrastructure. And so these types of events here are great. I mean, I've not been part of one of these in my career prior. And so I guess I commend New Mexico Water Research Institute for putting this on. I think bringing the power of research to solve public health problems is a critical need, and is frankly has not been something that I had seen in the public health service within the Indian Health Service sanitation facility construction group. We were primarily interested in building things and moving on, and there's more to public health and water than infrastructure. It involves understanding the challenges that people have in using that infrastructure, the reluctance that people have to utilize infrastructure and maybe the fears that they have with changes in their water sources. And I hope that we can begin to work on those within the Indian Health Service and learn from the communities that we are to support in providing this infrastructure. And so we're doing that now. We've stood up, as you saw in the video there, we've stood up the additional water points, and we provided the containers. We have water tablets that are available, and we were doing a tremendous job through Crystal's leadership on the public health the outreach and communication aspect, which is something that is always not considered as part of a project. It's kind of something that's just kind of left to the edge, and it's been forefront of this effort. We have follow-up reporting on this, and we're seeing that we've got about 20% of the containers have been distributed. The water usages are lower than we had anticipated, but we're still on site trying to figure that out and see what are the barriers to that. And getting at those answers will help not only in the short term, kind of to have people gain access to the water through the initiative, but also to help to design future projects that will be hopefully more robustly used and carry forward the benefits that are intended through the investments in these infrastructures. So that only can occur through the types of collaborations that has been built through the Water Access Coordination Group, through this group here, if we can kind of get this group to kind of like start motivating and start going forward, but through these kind of multidisciplinary, multi-organizational approaches that brings everyone's unique kind of perspective into it, kind of like interprets that, helps to iterate on that, and then can improve on the delivery, I think is a great thing. And I'm real happy to have been part of this and looking forward to continuing to be part of these discussions for the rest of my career.
So the HWRI program's here to stay. And I've heard from this morning comments of folks about people come in and then they leave. And what we are is what we bring to the table are some of these critical resources that are needed. Money, not a ton, but money. We also see people, I mean, the people you're looking at are two of my all-time heroes from the work that I've seen them do since COVID hit. Incredible, absolutely incredible. Also, Nikki Tooley, who's been part of the HWRI team, and Dr. Carletta Chief and President Nez and his team. I mean, seeing this in action has been incredibly awe-inspiring. But the gravity of this has hit us hard. As a funder located at a university that can leverage the intellectual resources, and as a land grant university, it's in HWRI's DNA to attempt to address environmental and social justice problems. I can't think of a bigger one. They said waters, I can't find a bigger one, and I can't anymore think of a better place to model how we can address this solvable, scalable, wicked problem together. The motto of HWRI is, together we can and must do more, but also we can and must do more together. So why is WACG, as we call it, so important? When they say it's a model, it is a model, what all of you have been talking about all day. Every element was faithfully respected by the group of people, and we were just privileged to be part of the team. And guess what? It worked. It worked in the middle of COVID. With people, I mean, just think about this. So from a funder's perspective, you want to make a difference. You want to make a dent in the world's problems, but you want to do it right. What HWRI was able to help with is we're nimble, we're non-bureaucratic, we have money, and we listened. We respected the principle, we were taught, we were mentored by Dr. Chief and by Dr. Tully Cordova and by Captain Harvey and everybody on this team. And we paid attention to what they were saying was needed. We didn't say, here are our goals and here's some money to do it. We asked the water team, what are your goals? And they know the answer. How, where, and in what order they need for things to be done. So what we're going to do now, besides stay, is get the word out. This video is important. And we also have together collaborated on an article that we hope to publish for an audience of other funders and say, this is how you do it. This is a way to do it, and it's not a mystery how to do it right. It really isn't. All of you are saying something that I can synthesize and hear as a common, united message. So for us, you need the approvals. You need consultation at the beginning, the middle, throughout. You need Native and Indigenous leaders at the fore. The first time we were at the table for WACG, who spoke first from the University of Arizona was Dr. Carletta Chief. Now that's the way it should happen. And at every step of the way, she and Crystal and Nikki have guided us in order to make sure that what we're doing is authentic, respectful, and responsive to what the nation wants for itself or themselves. We also want to raise their voices. We want people to hear not just the message, but who they are and what they've accomplished, and respect for traditional tribal knowledge. I can't say enough good things about this team. The last year and a half has been awful, but not this. Working on a terrible problem together has sort of knitted back some of my hope for the world and the quality of the people and their character in terms of attacking a resilience issue of this magnitude. What they modeled was resilience. And, we needed that. So I'm just grateful, we all are, I'm speaking for the WRRI team, that we were allowed in and that they were able to teach us how to help better.
Thank you for those great initial reflections and for all the insight on the successful collaboration and coordination. We have one question in the chat from Andrew Schuler. His question is there parallel work to provide funding or construction assistance for wells and or decentralized wastewater treatment where appropriate?
Yeah, there definitely is. The Indian Health Service annually identifies the sanitation deficiency needs, in collaboration with tribal governments across the nation, and then works to develop and design projects just like that to install to serve tribal homes and communities.
And then just following up on that, we are on the horizon of ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding coming in, and there is an opportunity for that as well. Our hope was that we could get pipe water to every single home on the Navajo Nation, but the reality is that the sparse population, the vast rural living provides those challenges, not only from a standpoint, from the economic standpoint, but as well as the water quality when we began to think about water aging. And so that's why in these instances, cistern and septic systems make the most sense. Although they're decentralized from public water systems, it's important to note that as the Department of Water Resources for the Navajo Nation, are not going to tell people where to live. I mean, people live throughout the over 27,000 square miles because that's where for generations their families have lived. And so it's important when we think about our wicked water challenges in the Navajo Nation, the sparse population as well as the rural living provides challenges associated when we begin to think about water development. Associated with that is also thinking about water quality challenges that we have throughout the Navajo Nation on the southwestern part of the Navajo Nation. Just north of I-40, as you're traveling from Gallup to Flagstaff, we have brackish water. And so there's opportunities with entities like the University of Arizona, Dr. Carletta Chief and others to be able to use desalination efforts to provide an opportunity not only for providing water, but also using some of that waste from that system to be able to help with agriculture purposes. But through these opportunities that we have with different partners, there are ways in which we're thinking, I've seen something else about gray water and thinking about cistern and septic systems. The reason why we included Nikki in the presentation today was to be able to describe what value can be added to tribal nations when those who are raised within our tribes, pueblos, and nations return home to help resiliency as well as tribes become self-sufficient. And so with these opportunities of research partnerships, that's exactly like there's a Navajo student right now at Portland State who is interested in that very issue of gray water. And so it's been my opportunity to be able to work with faculty, not only that with graduate and undergraduate students who are Navajo students or who are allies of the Navajo Nation, to be able to address water related challenges through the resources that they have through their academic universities, but also through the knowledge that they have from being from the area as well.
Great, thank you. See, I know we're running a little over time. Mark, is there time for one more question, or should we?
Yeah, I think that would be fine.
Okay, so there's one more question in the chat from Russell. He says, funding for maintenance of water systems seems to be an issue. It seems that construction funds are easier to obtain, but maintenance funds are lacking. Is this accurate?
100% accurate there, Russell. Yeah, I mean, the Indian Health Service has the authority under the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act to support operation and maintenance of tribal water systems. Funding has never been placed into the budget for that request, and so there's a lot of chatter around the edges of that right now. We did complete it would have been complete if COVID hadn't hit, but I'm working on it right now to get out a report on our initial attempt to try to quantify the operation and maintenance cost across American Indian tribally operated systems and Alaska Native villages. It was a report that took quite a few years to do. We randomly sampled water utilities and collected up expense data. And so that report will be coming out to kind of show kind of like what the expenditures are, what they should be based upon our best guess on kind of like what works and kind of what the gap is to help to quantify that. But yeah, you're right. That is a challenge. And you know, it's a challenge for a lot of rural communities because the populations densities are small, and it costs a lot of money to run these systems appropriately. You know, and making sure that the people working there have a living wage to support themselves, because they are public health professionals.
And Lonnie, if I could, I'll just go ahead and real quickly answer Bob's question in the chat. The Navajo Nation leadership, including the president of the Navajo Nation, has met with White House during their White House listening session, along with other tribal leaders and Alaska Native leaders, to be able to describe the challenges that are associated with infrastructure. So including not only like water quality, aging infrastructure, but also the need for capital improvement related to water development has been stated, as well as our director of the Navajo Nation Department of Water Resources testified before the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. And it's been a great opportunity. I myself have also participated in a listening session with different staff from the White House to be able to describe our needs, our unique challenges. Tribes have very unique challenges when it comes to water access challenges. And I would encourage those who are interested in water access related challenges with tribal nations to be able to attend the breakout session, the Universal Access to Clean Water. You'll be encouraged to hear about the different ongoing efforts there.
Great, thank you all so much for your insight and your thoughts, and again, your work as part of the Water Access Coordination Group. Again, just thank you for being here. I think if anyone, I know more people have questions, but if you all are able to stick around and answer them in the chat, we'd appreciate that. But I'll hand the mic back to Mark now.
All right, thank you, Lonnie, and thank you to all of our panelists for participating. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our afternoon breakout sessions right now, but before I do, I just wanted to give a chance for those of you who are interested in seeing some maps that were prepared for this workshop by the ISC Water Planning Program, along with Amy Lewis, one of our breakout session facilitators of Hydro Analytics LLC. I'll provide the link to that in the chat to all of you who might want to view or download those maps. And a little bit of an explanation of how exactly our breakout sessions will work. So what you can expect is that once I open up the breakout rooms, and I'll let you know when that happens, you should see a little breakout rooms button like this one on your toolbar, either at the bottom of your screen, or it may be located at the top if you're in in full screen mode. And from there, you'll simply choose a breakout room, and you'll have a choice of the 6 breakout rooms that we have designated, and then we're planning to use the kind of main meeting room as just sort of like an open session for those who might be interested in something along those lines. And so if you have an older version of Zoom below version 5.3, you can still participate in the breakout rooms. It's just that you'll have to reach out to me or our technical co-host, Jeanette Torres, to have us assign you to one of the breakout rooms. Also, once you, if you do have a newer version of Zoom, once you choose a breakout room, you're also free to move about if you want to sample another another breakout session, move around a bit. You're free to do that as well. So before I open up those rooms, I'd like to just give a brief introduction of our wonderful facilitators who've agreed to volunteer their time and effort in facilitating these breakout sessions. So first, I'd like to, for our universal access to clean water session that Crystal just mentioned, being facilitated by Bitte Becker. Bitte Becker has dedicated her career to the Navajo Nation and its natural resources, and she's currently an attorney for the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority. Prior to that, she served as the director of the Navajo Nation Division of Natural Resources, as an appointee of President Begay and Vice President Nez, after having served the nation as an attorney for 11 years, focusing on water and natural resources matters. Continuing her deep interest and passion for water, she serves on the leadership team for the Tribal Working Group for the Colorado River, and is honored to serve on the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission as an appointee of Governor Lujan Grisham, and as well on the Navajo Nation Water Rights Commission. She's a member of the nation and lives on Navajo Nation in Fort Defiance with her husband and 2 children. Next up, for our research to inform tribal water rights breakout, we have kind of a dual facilitation going on that's being handled by the Utton Transboundary Resources Center. So we have Adrian Oglesby, who has been director of the Utton Center since 2014. He's a graduate of the University of New Mexico School of Law and has practiced water law since 2000, including working with the Utton Center on many projects. Adrian's legal career has been focused on river and riparian restoration, agricultural preservation, efficient water management, governmental accountability, and fish and wildlife conservation. He's also advised irrigation districts, acequias, Pueblo and tribal governments, farmers, environmental organizations, and local water providers. Alongside Adrian in the session is Stephanie Russo-Baca, who joined the Utton Center in 2018. She holds both the Indian Law and Natural Resources and Environmental Law certificates, and served on the Tribal Law Journal as a staff member and editor. As staff attorney, Stephanie assists with the activities of the Joe M. Stell Ombudsman Program, the statewide program that provides impartial adjudication information and procedural guidance to unrepresented water rights claimants in the state of New Mexico. Stephanie contributes significantly to the Utton Center's overall mission of providing objective, research-based public service to New Mexico's communities on issues related to energy, climate change, ecological conservation, food systems, and international resource management. Facilitating our environmental justice breakout session, we have Julia Fay Bernal. Julia is director of the Pueblo Action Alliance and an enrolled tribal member at Sandia Pueblo. She's also from Taos Pueblo and the Yuki Creek Nations of Oklahoma. She has her BA in English and Literature from the University of Redlands. Currently, she's working towards her MA in Water Resources Policy Management and an MA in Community Regional Planning at the University of New Mexico. In 2014, she obtained a Water Resource Technician certification from the BIA through the Native American Water Corps. Julia has contributed her analysis on environmental issues in New Mexico with her expertise in New Mexico water and environmental policies and organization. Particularly, her focus has remained on the oil and gas industry and how its adverse impacts affect the environment, the water, and people. She advocates for the decolonization of water policy and stolen water resources. She has helped Pueblo Action Alliance build campaigns against carbon pricing, fracking 101 education, and reclamation of Indigenous water management practices. Next up, we're welcoming for our data sharing and collaboration models that respect sovereignty and build trust breakout session. We have Christine Kirkpatrick from the San Diego Supercomputer Center. Christine is the Division Director for IT Systems and Services at the San Diego Supercomputer Center at the University of California, San Diego, and Deputy Director and Co-Principal Investigator of the NSF-funded West Big Data Innovation Hub. Kirkpatrick has extensive teaching experience and expertise in developing associated technologies, especially those needed for effective online teaching. She founded UC San Diego's Instructional Web Development Center, which offers tools and assistance to faculty using web-based resources in their courses. She also taught at UC San Diego Extension for more than a decade, where she helped launch the Teaching Online Certificate and taught credential courses in curriculum development and technology enhanced instruction. We'd also like to welcome, as one of our facilitators, Helena Deswood of the USDA Southwest Climate Hub. For this session on climate change impacts on water, Helena is a tribal coordinator at the USDA Southwest Climate Hub. She grew up in a rural area of northern Arizona. As a daughter of a small farmer and rancher on the Navajo Nation, she developed an interest in livestock, farming, and horses. Helena received a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture with an emphasis on animal science and a Master's of Science in Environmental Science from the from New Mexico State University. And last but certainly not least here, as I mentioned, with the maps provided for this workshop, we have Amy Lewis of Hydro Analytics LLC, and she'll be facilitating a breakout session on research to support the adoption and implementation of water quality standards. So Amy is a hydrologist who has worked in New Mexico for 36 years in both the public and private sectors, and as an independent consultant for federal, state, city, and tribal decision makers. She's worked on projects ranging from conducting research on the impacts of forest thinning on water budgets to developing the state water plan to preparing water quality standards for pueblos. So with that, I'm going to now open up our breakout sessions. I'll let you know if anybody has anything else they want to mention in the meantime.
Mark, do you still want us back at 2:10, or do we have a little bit more time?
Yeah, we'll have a little bit more time. So what I'll do is I'm going to keep with our initial, we had sort of signed up or agreed on 40 minutes for these breakout sessions. So I'll set those, the breakout sessions to last for those 40 minutes. So what will happen is periodically we'll broadcast reminders on the time to all of the breakout rooms. And then in the last 2 minutes, you should see a countdown timer that will let you know when the session is about to end, and you'll all automatically be joined back in to the main meeting room. All right, everybody. Well, welcome back to the main meeting room. At this time, I'd like to allow each of our facilitators to just give a few minutes and share some of the key points and discussion topics and issues that were discussed in your own breakout sessions. So let me see who all, make sure everyone's back in the meeting. I guess we can start just sort of going in the order of facilitators and sessions listed in the program. So Bitte Becker, do you want to give a brief summary of your session?
Sure. So my session was mainly me talking about the lack of access to clean drinking water in Indian country. I think the main statistic I'll share with you is one that the U.S. Water Alliance and Dig Deep found and issued in 2019, saying that if you were the sole factor, the sole most determinative factor for American citizens to determine if they lack access to clean drinking water is their race, meaning Native Americans and Alaska Natives are 19 times less likely to have pipes in their home for water than white Americans. And compare that to Black and Latinx, for Black and Latinx, it's 2.5 times as likely. So you jump from 2.5 to 19 times less likely to have piped water in your home. And then we discussed the 4 different forms of lack of access in Indian country. We discussed the level of funding needed to solve the problem. And the last thing that I think most people find surprising is there's a minimum of 5 different agencies that are part of the solution. And if you're looking at, if you would like to read a report focused on the Colorado River Basin and the lack of access to clean water, I just put the report in the chat. And thank you for Anne Gray for figuring out that technology for me.
Okay, well, thank you so much for volunteering your time for this breakout session. Next up, from the Research to Inform Tribal Water Rights, either Adrian or Stephanie, if you'd like to share what was discussed in your breakout room.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, we part of the fun of our session is that I think we were all a little confused by the title. So Research to Inform Tribal Water Rights. Stephanie and I provided a sort of an overview of the research pathway a tribe might embark upon as they try to determine what their water right claims are. But the discussion actually was a lot broader than that. Sharon brought in questions of confidentiality and how to manage sensitive tribal water data. Mike was asking questions about what happens once you get your settlement. We talked about how that's when you really get to start negotiating how you're going to manage your water. It's once you have a adjudicated or settled water right. Andrew gave us some really good input on in terms of how to the need to engage with tribal communities and tribal elders, and as you're researching your water rights. We provided a little information about some resources out there. The National Indian Law Library is a great place to go to find tribal codes related to water. And then at the Etna Center's webpage, you can find the Native American Water Rights Settlement Project database, where we have created a repository of all the finalized Indian water rights settlements across the country. Yeah, and Stephanie, if you want to add anything, jump on in.
I think that's great, Adrian. We just wanted to encourage individuals that if they had any further questions, that they can reach out to us. And you know, I put in my contact information, or if they need help accessing any of the resources, that we can help them, you know, walk through that process.
Okay, well, thank you so much to both of you and to the Utton Center for volunteering your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Next up, we have Julia Bernal, who facilitated the environmental justice breakout room.
Yeah, hello. Again, it was mostly me talking, but I definitely did want to share some, you know, some foundational type of understanding of what environmental justice has meant, specifically to Indigenous people. You know, we talked a lot throughout the conference around the disparities for access and security to water, you know, infrastructure or aging infrastructure, even the lack of infrastructure in place in order for tribes to have that essential basic human right. And a lot of the times, you know, in these disparities, community voice is left out a lot of the time. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about what community involvement means in justice, especially for Indigenous people. I mentioned that any sort of planning around land and water definitely involves a justice component because of settler colonialism and how that has impacted our communities up until this point. We have gaps and disparities in many different sectors because of this disenfranchisement that our communities have experienced over time. And so, you know, I wanted to, you know, bring in a lot of the intersectionality of different types of social mobilization, whether that's stricter environmental protections, whether that is advocacy and community voice involved in participation in planning efforts, also centering traditional ecological knowledge and Indigenous knowledge as a form of expertise in understanding issues around water, issues around building capacity. And some of the questions that were posed in the session is, you know, how do we get communities involved, or how are we, you know, going to tie this, you know, the Western academia frame of thought around, you know, technology and science to, you know, those that may not be deemed to have expertise, but really centering lived experiences and traditional information and knowledge that has been passed down as a form of expertise and really order to understand the issue, and then create different types of research methodology around those lived experiences. And then also just, you know, being able to provide accessible information, being able to convey your findings. And that was mentioned many times throughout this conference as, you know, as people in the technological and science fields, you know, we gather research and information, but how do we then make that accessible in order for our communities to really understand what that means and how their voice and advocacy can also be integrated in that realm as well. So if I missed anything, please feel free to chime in, but that was the basis of what our discussion was. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Julia, for your very insightful breakout session discussion and dialogue. If anybody's interested in learning more about the Pueblo Action Alliance, there should be a link that's posted just a little bit up in the chat for anybody who wants to check that out. Okay, and moving along, the data sharing and collaboration models breakout session. Christine, are you available, or is somebody else from that particular
Sure.
breakout?
Yeah, I am available, but I I would actually like to lift up other voices. We had a really interesting discussion. We talked about some models that maybe we could borrow from in finding better and more equitable ways to work together. But I really wanted to lift up her voice, with her permission, Miss Lane, to talk about, well, the context is we talked about the challenge of researchers of public universities who can't have access to tribal data because it's not to be made public. But Miss Lane reminded us of the tremendous resources that are available within tribes and within local nonprofits. So if she'd be willing to reprise a bit what she shared.
Hi, can everybody hear me? My name is Nona Lane, and I'm the founder and the co-founder and director of Navajo Ethnoagriculture. It's an education farm on the Navajo Nation. I do not represent the Navajo Nation, but I do represent my community of Ninanazad. And we're in Fruitland, New Mexico. And as an education farm, we run a citizen science project that was based on the Gold King mine spill. So we've partnered with schools, a couple of tribal colleges and a preparatory school in the area to start science projects that help to revitalize farming in our tribal community, especially along the San Juan River after the Gold King mine spill. And with our project, and we actually work with Dr. Pauletta Chief. She's a great mentor of our project and supporter. But with our project, we're able to gain through the studies and the projects that the students do and the citizens do, the local community members, we're able to build our own databases basically in our own projects. And these are really specific to our area, to our region. And with this, we have this data, like we have these projects, and the students actually control what goes in and out of their projects because they are the builders and they're the owners. And our concept is to have them take this on to the next level of education, into higher ed, or to build this out to even a larger project. But we're the starting point of a lot of this action. So through this, we're able to work with Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They're the only institution we work with because they recognize kind of a lot of the inequity around data science, and they want to address sort of all of the the injustices to underserved communities. And they're doing it kind of in the right way that we really appreciate, and they are absolutely committed to what we do and our tribal community here in this area. So we don't work with any other institution just because we haven't had that trust built or that real like solid effort to maintain a real strong working relationship with the school. So we have that with a couple of tribal colleges, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and then another school in the area. So that's kind of like a way to go around all of this kind of tricky data space. And also, I'm not saying that they've never done anything wrong in terms of like data extraction and stuff, but they're addressing it and in a way that no one else has. And also, this is another reason why we formed our organization, is because it is Navajo owned, Navajo controlled. And as an education institution, as an education organizations, we're able to like control what it is that people have been extracting for so long. It's just like all of these projects, all of this like Indigenous knowledge. Now is a time that Indigenous knowledge is finally being recognized. Well, that blended with an actual like Western science degree really puts us in a different place than a lot of other organizations or even institutions are. So that's kind of what the gist of our conversation was. Is that good, Christine?
That's perfect. Thanks for being willing to reprise it. In just a second and shorter point, someone in our group is moving to an institution that has a poor track record, you could say, of working with tribes and nations. And so the question was, what can be done to rebuild that trust? And if I could ask Ms. Carr to reprise her answer. I thought that was a nice insight.
Thank you very much. I actually came from a situation in which, the institution had some poor records there as well. But then what I just reiterated in the conversation that we had is, we often look to the leadership of those higher education institutions to kind of right those wrongs or to make connections back with that, because the attitude of the leadership there is going to trickle down into the different departments or the staff members who really want to make that effort to collaborate and connect with those tribal entities. And the collaboration is really key to partnership, and especially for research. If we want to make those goals of the institutions really prevalent in our research and everything, but we have to take a step back and consider, do those goals align with that of those tribal entities? And so that conversation, communication, and also I think reaching back up to the administration of those higher education institutions are going to be key to moving that forward. And I'm very happy to report that now in the organization I'm with now, we have that structure. Our dean of the college, has made efforts to connect with the staff at our level. And there, from there, we have that support to go out into the communities and really create those dynamic and trustful relationships. So again, I think that is a very important key factor there to developing the relationship and the trust between the higher education institutions and those entities.
Thank you so much. And I do want to thank everyone in our breakout, and thank you to Mark and the organizers for providing that space. It was really a fun 40 minutes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to all of you as well. I believe our next facilitator would be Helena Deswood of the Climate Change Impacts on Water breakout room.
Good afternoon. So we had a good discussion related to climate change impacts we're seeing on the water resources. It's going to be like seeing drought in the past couple of years, early snowmelt runoffs from up in the mountains, getting less water in the Rio Grande, and talk about discussions about water use in agricultural and municipal use as well, and to have changes to the water policy to help conserve water for future use, and also talk about diversifying crops to help a discussion about farmers diversifying crops to, like here in the Mesilla Valley, where there's an increase in pecan growers, maybe they could switch to crops that are less water intensive. And also we talked about weather monitoring stations across New Mexico. We shared resources of where we could find some funds. There's also a website that was shared, newmexicowaterdata.org, where the Water Data Act was passed to be shared across multiple agencies. And yeah, that was our breakout session there. If anyone from the group would like to chime in, please go right ahead.
Okay, well, thank you again so much, Ms. Deswood. And I believe that brings us to now Amy Lewis with the Water Quality Standards breakout report.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. We had a great discussion and two very specific research needs, and then kind of a broader need. And so I'll talk about those. The broader need is more just basic background information about water quality, basic sampling, just to establish the background concentrations of metals and arsenic and fecal coliforms, etc. And then there was also just a lot of questions about, well, what is the water quality? What is in this area, on the Navajo Nation. And so it made me realize why the water plans are kind of useful, the regional water plans and the state water plan. This is a starting place if people have basic information or basic interest in, some of the fundamentals about what are the aquifers and what are some of the issues, what are the local contamination sources. There's maps of those in each of the regional water plans. So but for specific research ideas, one was Alyssa talked quite a bit about how there's a 7-fold increase in human fecal coliforms in the San Juan River downstream of Farmington. And to get a handle on what's causing that is challenging because it crosses from tribal to non-tribal land, and her funding that she can get from the Surface Water Bureau does not cover Navajo land. So there's need for coordination there. So that's a good research topic and a challenge, an administrative challenge for funding. And then another specific example is Sophie from Tesuque Pueblo. They've seen an increase in arsenic in the Rio and Medio, and they're trying to figure out what's caused that. And there's a couple of possibilities that they're speculating on, but that's a good research topic. And there's just a general interest in mining, the impacts from all the abandoned mines, and could there be another Gold King spill? What else? What other problems are in the background ready to happen? So that's a snapshot of our discussion.
Okay, well, thank you once again, Amy. And I just wanted to take the chance to remind everyone again to visit the link that I posted in the chat, where you can find some of the maps that Amy Lewis, along with some help from the Interstate Stream Commission Water Planning Group, some of the maps that they put together for this workshop. You can find them at that link. And so before I turn things over to Lonnie again to discuss some of the next steps beyond this workshop, I just want to take a quick moment to announce some of our prize giveaway winners. You'll remember that if you completed one of our pre-workshop surveys and provided some contact information, then you'd be entered to win one of our WRRI water bottles or a pair of silver dime bead earrings donated by Dr. Tuli Cordova. So I'm pleased to announce for our 2 WRRI water bottles, we have one going to Heaven Lucero. I think I saw Heaven in the participant list earlier, so congratulations. And then another going to Carlo Marino. So congratulations, Carlo. And for the pair of earrings, the random drawing drew, let me see here, it was Carmen Bodoni. So congratulations, Carmen. I'll reach out to all of our prize winners to get shipping information so we can send you these prizes as soon as we can. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lonnie. Oh, you're still muted, Lonnie.
Great, thank you, Mark. I'd just like to thank everyone again for participating in today's workshop and for contributing to discussions on building tribal capacity through water research partners. I'd also like to again thank Mark from WRRI for hosting this workshop and doing a great job in putting the program together, as well as my fellow planning committee members, Dr. Tuli Cordova and Myron Armijo. And I really think this workshop was useful as a new faculty at UNM, Native faculty working in water. I've been approached many times with questions on how to do water research with. I could only speak to my own experience, and I couldn't speak to everyone. So I'm glad this workshop was put together so that we could begin, bringing everyone together to have these discussions. And I'm very encouraged by the participation today in dialogue. And I'd like to, before I, offer my next steps, I'd just like to provide some reflection on today's discussions and revisit some of the objectives from the workshop today. So one of our objectives was to encourage new and continuing collaborative research and to foster discussion on best practices. And I think we definitely saw that through our earlier presentations this morning in our panel on best practices, which was very excellent and insightful. We also heard a lot of good advice on approaches from Governor Myron Armijo, and I hope that the breakout discussions also provided ways for additional ways for people to connect. Another objective was to promote community engaged and community-led water research. And I think one of the ways that we saw this demonstrated was through the presentation that Nikki Tully gave, and also additionally, the programs we heard about that the University of Arizona running in their partnerships with tribes. And I think we can see University of Arizona and their research with their community model. And I think some of the quotes from the video that Nikki shared is that, research should be for the communities and by the communities, and that co-development is needed for solutions. And another objective was to promote water research that builds tribal capacity. Crystal talked about this in her opening remarks, and we also saw examples from Nikki's presentation and examples given the video we saw on working together. And hopefully we heard more about more research examples during the breakout sessions as well. And then finally, our last objective was to show how collaborative projects benefit research institutions and support Native students doing research within their own tribal communities. And again, I think Nikki is a great example of, how her work with the Navajo Nation is, is like providing motivation for her to do great graduate research. The presentation by the Indian Resources Development Group and their internship program also shows another example of ways institutions can, create programs for Native students to do research within their own tribal communities. And I'd also like to, share a little bit about my background and to give more perspective as a faculty at the University of New Mexico. I think doing research to benefit communities was instilled in me as early on as high school when I was a student at Santa Fe Indian School in the community-based education program. And in that program, I worked with the Tisuki Pueblo in learning about different water challenges they were facing and using community-based approaches as a way to co-produce knowledge and research on how the Pueblo is addressing these issues. And I think that served as a foundation for how I continue to do my work in higher education. As mentioned in my bio, I've graduated from programs at University of New Mexico and New Mexico Tech. And I also participated in a summer interdisciplinary modeling program at New Mexico State University. So our universities here in New Mexico, and a lot of our institutions, we do have like the programs that can provide this technical expertise for our Native students. But I think as academic institutions and representatives of academic institutions, we need to go further in thinking about how to support Native students and in thinking of how to support Native students in doing research with their own communities. And this goes beyond not only recruiting students into our programs, but supporting students once they're in their programs and developing a culture of inclusion while they were in their program. and providing the necessary means for them to finish the program as well. And so a lot of the discussion today, we heard a lot about a lot of talk that, kind of talked around what's known as like the R's of doing work with tribal communities. And some of them that I'd like to highlight are like, one is, so we talked about respect for cultural, community, and tribal values, respect in the sense of the need for developing protocols with the tribal partners and the need to respect tribal sovereignty. Another R is relevance, making sure that our projects are community-led and stakeholder-led, that knowledge is co-produced. And to do this, we need to begin the relationship building early in order to really understand the needs of communities. Another R is reciprocity. So we need to think about how can our research be mutually beneficial and how can it meet the needs of tribal nations and communications, and how can we communicate our research findings back to the community. And then another R is responsibility. Again, how do we make sure we're continuing to follow a protocol that was designed by the communities that we work with? How can we do research responsibly and protect the information? And so, I acknowledge there was so much meaningful discussion going on today, and we don't want this discussion to end with just this workshop today. And, I think New Mexico, or the WRRI, has demonstrated their commitment to supporting ethical tribal research through like the different programs that Mark talked about earlier, and through hosting this workshop today. Another opportunity to continue this dialogue will actually happen during the next New Mexico Water Resources Research Institute this fall, where we plan to have a 90-minute workshop focused on tribal water planning. And so I think that's something that we hope you keep in mind for future opportunities to continue this discussion. Another opportunity we hope to invite everyone to is through partnerships we've developed with at UNM. And at UNM, we also work with different tribal partners through the different water programs we're working with. And through our conversations with our partners, we also recognize the need to continue this dialogue. And so we hope to have another workshop, hopefully in the fall, hosted by UNM. And the idea is to combine the efforts with the New Mexico Water Resources Research Institute and the different entities at UNM to continue hosting this dialogue. And I hope, this eventually leads to continuous capacity building for our communities, and developing trust and relationships as we address immediate and long-term water challenges. And so, yeah, again, I just want to say thank you to everyone and wish you all well as you leave the workshop today.